There is a quiet hum beneath the noise of modern life, a current of silent desperation that runs through our days. It is the feeling of being perpetually adrift in a river that moves too fast, of constantly striving, pushing, and pulling without ever truly arriving anywhere. We feel the weight of unspoken expectations from the world, from others, and most heavily, from ourselves. We build our lives on the promise that the next achievement, the next purchase, the next milestone will finally bring us a lasting sense of peace. Yet we find ourselves running on a wheel, exhausted by the chase, haunted by the quiet suspicion that we are lost. In our moments of stillness, we feel a profound sense of being stuck, overwhelmed by a storm of anxieties about the future and regrets about the past, a chaotic internal world that mirrors the chaos outside. Our natural reaction to this state is one of struggle. We try to fight our own minds, to suppress the feelings we don't want, to numb ourselves with endless distractions, or to simply grit our teeth and soldier on, believing that strength is the ability to withstand immense pressure. But this resistance, this constant internal war, only deepens the trenches of our own suffering. We exhaust ourselves fighting against the very nature of life, which is one of constant change, of gain and loss, of joy and sorrow. But what if there were another way? What if the path to strength was not through resistance, but through acceptance? What if peace was not something to be found outside of ourselves, but a power to be cultivated within? There exists an ancient wisdom, a timeless science of the mind that offers not an escape from the difficulties of life, but a radical way to engage with them. It is not a religion to be believed, but a practical art to be lived. It is a set of tools that allows us to stop fighting the river and instead learn how to navigate its currents with grace and skill. This is a journey that begins with a simple, revolutionary act, turning our attention inward, not to judge or to fix, but simply to understand. It is the beginning of an alchemy of the heart, a process of learning how to take the raw, painful material of our lives, the lead of our suffering, and transform it into the gold of wisdom, compassion, and unshakable inner power. To begin this journey of turning pain into power, we must first become detectives of our own minds, asking a question that is both simple and profound. Where does our struggle truly come from? When we feel the sting of criticism, the ache of loneliness, the gnawing anxiety of not being good enough, what is it, exactly, that is being hurt? We often believe our suffering is caused by the external world, by the words of another person, by a difficult situation, or by a painful loss. But the ancient wisdom of Buddhism suggests that the primary cause is not outside of us, but within. It points to a phantom architect dwelling in the deepest chambers of our consciousness, an unseen operator that filters every experience, writes every narrative, and directs our emotional lives from behind a curtain. This architect is known as the ego. Now, when we hear the word ego, we often think of arrogance or self-importance, but in this context, the meaning is far deeper and more subtle. The ego is not our true self. It is the self we have constructed, a mask we have been wearing for so long that we have forgotten it is a mask. It is a collage of ideas, a collection of labels, beliefs, memories, and stories that we have patched together since birth to create a sense of a solid, separate, continuous me. Think of it as a character in a long and elaborate play. This character has a name, a history, a set of likes and dislikes, a list of accomplishments and failures. It has roles it plays: a parent, a child, a professional, a friend, an artist. We have become so methodically invested in this role, so lost in the drama of its story, that we have forgotten that we are the actor, the silent, spacious awareness that is merely playing the part. Because this constructed self is not fundamentally real, it is inherently fragile. Like a sandcastle, it requires constant maintenance and defense against the changing tides of life. It lives in a state of perpetual insecurity, and so it needs constant validation from the outside world to prop itself up. It needs praise, agreement, success, and recognition to feel that it exists. This is why a simple comment can feel like a dagger to the heart, why failure can feel catastrophic, and why being ignored can feel like being erased. The perceived threat is not just to our comfort, but to the very existence of this character we believe ourselves to be. The primary activity of this ego is to create a ceaseless narrative, a running commentary on everything that happens, and this commentary is always filtered through the lens of me, my, and mine. The ego doesn't just see a sunset. It thinks, I am having a beautiful experience watching this sunset. I should post a picture of it so others know what a wonderful life I have. It doesn't just have an opinion. It declares, this is my belief, and it is the right one. This relentless process of personalization is the root of attachment and possessiveness. The ego extends its sense of self into objects, people, and ideas. It's not just a house, it's my house. It's not just a job, it's my identity. It's not just an opinion, it's who I am. By weaving our identity into these external and impermanent things, we set ourselves up for inevitable suffering, because the world is in a constant state of flux. There is a beautiful parable that illustrates this perfectly. A man spent his entire life designing and building the most exquisite house. He used the finest wood, the most beautiful stone, and polished every surface until it gleamed. His identity, his entire sense of self-worth, was poured into this creation. The house was his masterpiece, a monument to who he was. But once it was finished, a terrible anxiety took hold of him. He became terrified of anyone entering it. A guest might scratch the floor, a child might stain the walls, the sun might fade the curtains, the wind might dislodge a single roof tile. He spent his days and nights guarding the house, worrying endlessly about its preservation. He never hosted a dinner, never sat peacefully by the fire, never truly lived in the magnificent home he had built. The house, which was meant to be a source of joy and shelter, had become a perfect, beautiful prison. We are all this man, and the house is our ego, this carefully constructed identity. We spend our lives polishing it, defending it, and curating its image. But we are too afraid of it getting scratched or dented by life to ever live freely and authentically. The core engine driving this entire project of self-construction and defense is the ego's deepest and most primal fear, the fear of its own annihilation. On some subconscious level, the ego knows it is an illusion. It knows it is a temporary collection of thoughts and sensations, not a solid, enduring entity. This deep insecurity fuels its desperate quest for permanence in a world that offers none. The ego resists change because every change is a small death, a reminder of its own fragile and fleeting nature. It clings to the past because the past is known and fixed. It obsesses over the future, trying to control it, to script it, to make it safe and predictable. It hates loss, endings, and goodbyes because they are irrefutable evidence that nothing lasts, including, eventually, itself. This battle against the natural flow of life is the very definition of suffering. It is the friction created when our desire for a fixed reality grinds against the fluid, ever-changing truth of what is. The first step in dismantling this painful illusion is simply to learn to recognize the voice of the ego in our daily lives. It speaks to us constantly, but we have become so used to it that we assume it is our own true voice. Its language is one of judgment, comparison, and a desperate need to be right. The voice of judgment is the running commentary that labels every person, situation, and experience as good or bad, right or wrong, better or worse. It's the voice that whispers, "He shouldn't have said that," or "This isn't how things are supposed to be." The voice of comparison is the relentless measuring stick. Am I as successful as she is? Is his life better than mine? It creates a world of hierarchy, of winners and losers, and ensures we are almost always in a state of dissatisfaction. The voice of needing to be right is what flares up in an argument, turning a simple disagreement into a battle for survival. It's not about discovering the truth. It's about defending a position, because the ego has identified with that position. To be proven wrong feels like a personal defeat, a crack in the foundation of the constructed self. By starting to notice this voice, not with criticism, but with a gentle, curious awareness, we begin to create a space between it and ourselves. We begin to see that this voice is just a pattern of thought, a conditioned habit of the mind. It is not who we are. We are the silent awareness that hears the voice. This is the beginning of our freedom. We have now met the unseen architect of our suffering, this phantom narrator, this ghost in the machine that we have mistaken for the driver. We have seen how its frantic project of self-preservation, its fear of disappearing, is the very engine of our discontent. Now that we have identified this ghost that desperately tries to build a permanent fortress on shifting sands, we must turn our attention to the nature of the world it so fears. We must look directly into the heart of the one truth the ego cannot stand, the universal, inescapable, and ultimately liberating truth of impermanence. Having met the unseen architect of our suffering, the ego, with its desperate need for solidity and permanence, we must now turn our gaze towards the world it tries to control. The ego's greatest project is to build a fortress of certainty, a permanent shelter of a fixed identity on the ground of reality. But it is building on shifting sand. It is building on a truth so profound, so all-pervasive, that we often overlook it entirely. This is the truth of impermanence. In the ancient language of the Buddha, this is called anicca. And understanding anicca, not just as a concept but as a lived reality, is not a cause for despair, but the very key that unlocks the prison of our own making. Impermanence is the fundamental law of all existence. Nothing is static. Everything is in a constant state of flux. From the cosmic to the microscopic, from the external world to the internal landscape of our own mind, everything is arising, changing, and passing away. The mountains that seem so solid and eternal are, over immense spans of time, rising, eroding, and turning to dust. The stars in the night sky are born from cosmic clouds and will one day burn out. This is true for our own lives as well. Our bodies are in a continuous process of change. Cells are dying and being replaced. We age from infancy to old age, and the face that looks back at us from the mirror today is not the same face from a decade ago, nor the one we will have a decade from now. Our relationships evolve, friendships deepen or drift apart. Love transforms. Our careers begin, they flourish, and they end. The seasons turn, one after the other, in a ceaseless, beautiful dance of birth, growth, decay, and renewal. But the most crucial place to observe impermanence is in the direct, moment-to-moment experience of our own consciousness. Take a moment to look within. A thought appears in your mind, seemingly from nowhere. It lingers for a moment, and then, just as mysteriously, it vanishes. It is replaced by another thought, which in turn will also fade. An emotion, perhaps a wave of sadness, swells in your chest. It feels all-consuming, as if it will last forever. But if you watch it closely, without feeding it with stories, you will notice that it too crests and subsides. A physical sensation, an itch on your skin, or an ache in your shoulder, arises. It commands your attention, yet it too will transform, lessen, or disappear. The sounds that reach your ears are a constant stream of appearing and disappearing vibrations. Your very breath is a perfect teacher of impermanence. Each inhale arises, fills the lungs, and dissolves, followed by a pause, and then the exhale arises, empties, and dissolves. This is the nature of reality. It is a river, not a rock. It is a dance, not a statue. The problem, and the root of so much of our human anguish, is that impermanence itself is not the cause of our suffering. The suffering is caused by our resistance to this fundamental truth. The ego, in its desperate search for a solid ground to stand on, refuses to accept this flow. It attempts to do the impossible, to stop the river. This resistance takes two primary forms: clinging and aversion. When we experience something pleasant, a moment of joy, a feeling of love, a taste of success, a beautiful sunset, the ego immediately reacts by clinging. It grasps onto the experience and says, "I like this. I want more of this. I want this to last forever." In that very moment of grasping, the pure joy of the experience is tainted. It becomes laced with a subtle undercurrent of anxiety, the fear of losing the very thing we are trying to hold. We are no longer fully present with the pleasant experience. We are already worrying about its inevitable end. We try to capture it, to possess it, to freeze, frame it. But life cannot be frozen. The attempt to make a beautiful, flowing moment permanent is what drains it of its life and turns it into a source of anxiety. The other form of resistance is aversion. When we experience something unpleasant, a difficult emotion like anger or fear, a painful physical sensation, a situation we don't like, the ego immediately tries to push it away. It says, "I don't want this. Get this away from me. This shouldn't be happening." We declare war on our own present moment reality. We tense our bodies. We distract our minds. We numb ourselves, all in an effort to escape what is already here. This struggle creates immense tension and suffering. It is like being caught in quicksand. The more we struggle against the unpleasant feeling, the deeper we sink into it. The pain of the initial event is compounded by the suffering of our resistance to it. The path to freedom, then, is not to somehow get rid of all unpleasant experiences and hold on to all pleasant ones. That is an impossible task. The path is to change our relationship with the flow itself, to learn how to be with both the pleasant and the unpleasant, without clinging and without aversion. We do this through the practice of mindfulness. We train ourselves to observe the arising and passing of all phenomena with a calm and accepting awareness. When a pleasant feeling arises, we train ourselves to enjoy it fully, without grasping. We savor it, knowing it is a temporary gift. When an unpleasant feeling arises, we train ourselves to meet it with a gentle, allowing presence, knowing that it too will pass. There is a profound story of a great Zen master who owned a beautiful, delicate teacup. He loved this teacup. He used it every day, and he would often admire its fine, translucent porcelain and perfect shape. He taught his students that he cherished this cup more than any of his other possessions. Yet, every time he held it, he would remind himself, "This cup is already broken." He was not being pessimistic or morbid. He was practicing the wisdom of impermanence. By fully embracing the fact that the cup was fragile and its destruction was inevitable, he was able to love it and appreciate its beauty more completely in every single moment. He was free from the constant, low-grade fear of it one day being broken. Then, one day, as fate would have it, the cup slipped from a student's hand and shattered on the floor. The students were distraught, but the master calmly looked at the pieces and said simply, "Of course." For him, the cup had been broken for years. Its physical breaking was simply the playing out of its true nature. This simple story contains the entirety of the teaching. To live with the awareness that everything we love, everything we possess, including our own bodies and lives, is already broken, is not to live in sadness. It is to live in freedom. It is to be able to cherish everything more deeply, to love more fully, and to engage with life more completely, because we are not paralyzed by the fear of loss. This understanding completely shifts the goal of our spiritual journey. We see the futility of trying to build a life of permanent, uninterrupted happiness. That is the ego's project, and it is doomed to fail. The true goal is to cultivate an inner state of unshakable peace, a deep equanimity that can gracefully dance with the ever-changing nature of life. We learn to become like a great surfer, not commanding the ocean to be still, but using skill, balance, and wisdom to ride the waves as they come, whether they are big or small, gentle or turbulent. This acceptance of impermanence changes everything. It shows us that life itself isn't the problem. Our fight against it is. And if everything is in flux, including our own experiences, then what is the true nature of the suffering that arises from this fight? To understand that, we must look closer and learn to distinguish between the unavoidable pain of life and the suffering we create for ourselves. We have seen that the nature of our existence is one of constant flow and change, a truth the Buddha called anicca, or impermanence. Because we live in this ever-shifting river of life, and because we have bodies that feel and hearts that care, it is an absolute certainty that we will encounter moments of pain. Acknowledging this is not pessimism. It is a radical act of honesty that sets the stage for true liberation. The problem is not that life contains pain. The problem is that we often unknowingly multiply that pain, transforming it into a much heavier, more pervasive state we can call suffering. To illuminate this crucial distinction, the Buddha offered one of the most practical and powerful metaphors in all of spiritual psychology, the metaphor of the two arrows. He taught that to live in this world is to be susceptible to being struck by a first arrow. This is unavoidable, but the second arrow is one we fire at ourselves. And this second arrow, unlike the first, is entirely optional. Understanding this difference is the key to unlocking a profound power over our own inner well-being. The first arrow is the direct, unfiltered experience of pain that is an inevitable part of the human condition. It can be physical, emotional, or situational. The physical first arrows are easy to recognize. The sudden, sharp pain of stubbing your toe, the dull throb of a headache, the discomfort of a cold, the chronic pain of an illness, or the natural aches and pains that come with an aging body. These are raw, physical sensations. The emotional first arrows are just as real. The sharp sting of criticism or rejection, the deep ache of grief when we lose someone we love, the disappointment when our hopes are dashed, the pang of loneliness, or the sadness we feel when we witness injustice or cruelty in the world. These feelings arise naturally in a heart that is open and alive. And then there are the situational first arrows, the stress of losing a job, the frustration of being stuck in traffic when you're already late, the anxiety of financial insecurity, or the general unease that comes from living in an uncertain and unpredictable world. These first arrows are, in a sense, impersonal. They are not a punishment or a sign that you have done something wrong. They are simply the texture of reality, the natural friction that occurs when our tender human lives interact with the raw, untamed nature of an impermanent world. To try and build a life completely free from any possibility of a first arrow is to try and live in a sterile bubble, a life devoid of risk, love, passion, and growth. The first arrow is simply life happening. The real drama, the source of our deepest anguish, begins with the second arrow. The second arrow is our reaction to the first. It is the layer of mental and emotional commentary, judgment, and resistance that we add on top of the initial, clean pain. It is the story we tell ourselves about what is happening. While the first arrow creates pain, it is the second arrow that creates suffering. This second arrow has many forms. One of its most common forms is blame and resentment. The first arrow of a headache strikes, and the second arrow is the thought, "My boss is stressing me out so much, it's his fault I feel this way." The first arrow of a relationship ending strikes, and the second arrow is a long, bitter narrative of blame, replaying every mistake and nursing a sense of injustice. Another form is the narrative of victimhood, the classic "why me?" The first arrow of illness strikes, and the second arrow says, "Why does this always happen to me? I don't deserve this. Life is so unfair. This story, while understandable, casts us in the role of a helpless victim and drains us of our power and agency. Then there is the second arrow of catastrophizing. The first arrow of a small pain in the chest strikes, and the second arrow is the immediate thought, this is a heart attack. I'm going to die. We take a present moment discomfort and project it into a terrifying, imagined future, creating a massive wave of fear and anxiety that is far more painful than the initial sensation itself. Perhaps the most common and destructive second arrow is simple resistance, the aversion we spoke of earlier. The first arrow of sadness arises, and the second arrow is the frantic thought, I can't feel this. This is bad. I need to get rid of this feeling right now. This inner declaration of war against our own emotional state creates enormous tension and turns a natural, passing feeling into a formidable inner enemy. Finally, there is the second arrow of identification. The first arrow of making a mistake at work strikes, and the second arrow is the thought, I am a failure. We take a single event, a single pain, and we allow it to define our entire identity. This is how temporary states of pain become solidified into chronic states of suffering. Imagine two warriors fighting in a battle. Both are struck by an enemy's arrow. This is the first arrow, the unavoidable wound of combat. The first warrior, upon feeling the sharp pain, immediately begins to scream, why me? I am cursed. This is the end. The gods have abandoned me. He thrashes in the dirt, consumed by rage and despair. He focuses not on the wound, but on the injustice of it all. By launching all of these second arrows of fear and resentment, he neglects the wound itself. He doesn't call for a medic. He doesn't try to keep it clean. As a result, the wound festers, becomes infected, and the poison spreads, causing him far more agony than the initial arrow ever could. His suffering is immense, prolonged, and ultimately self-inflicted. The second warrior is also struck. He feels the same, sharp, intense pain of the first arrow, but his reaction is different. He immediately assesses the situation. He grits his teeth against the pain, but his mind remains clear. He acknowledges the reality of his situation. I have been wounded. He doesn't waste precious time and energy on why it happened or who is to blame. Instead, he focuses on what can be done. He breaks off the shaft of the arrow to prevent further injury. He presses on the wound to slow the bleeding, and he calmly makes his way to the field medic. He experiences the clean pain of the wound, but he refuses to fire the second arrow of mental anguish. He doesn't poison himself with despair. His pain is real, but his suffering is minimized. The space between the first arrow striking and our reaction to it is where our freedom lies. Mindfulness is the practice of expanding that space. It is the cultivation of a sacred pause. When the first arrow hits, mindfulness allows us to not react on autopilot. It gives us a moment to breathe, to witness the raw sensation of the pain before we launch into the story about the pain. We can learn to observe the arising of the thought, this is terrible, without immediately becoming swept away by it. We can feel the heat of anger in our body without instantly translating it into blame. This ability to pause, to observe our pain without being consumed by our reaction to it, is a superpower. But it is not a magical ability we are born with. It is a skill that must be trained, a mental muscle that must be developed through practice. To avoid firing that second arrow, we need a tool, an anchor that can hold us steady in the storm of our own reactivity, a focal point that can bring our scattered, panicked mind back to the sanity of the present moment. This fundamental tool, the bedrock of this entire practice, is the simple, profound act of paying attention to our breath. It is the art of mindfulness. We now stand at a critical juncture in our journey. We have seen that life will inevitably send first arrows of pain our way, and we have understood that our suffering comes from the second arrows of reaction that we fire at ourselves. We have seen that the key to our freedom lies in the sacred pause, the space we can create between the event and our response. But this raises a vital question. When the storm of reactivity hits, when the winds of fear, anger, or anxiety begin to howl, how do we find this space? When our mind is a chaotic tempest of thought, how can we possibly find a moment of stillness? To do this, we need an anchor. We need something that can hold us steady, something that is always available, always reliable, and always rooted in the calm sanity of the present moment. Fortunately, we are all born with such an anchor. It is the breath. The simple, humble, and profound act of breathing is the foundation of mindfulness practice, a technique known in the ancient texts as anapanasati, or mindfulness of breathing. We so often take our breath for granted, yet it is the most faithful companion we will ever have. It is with us from the moment of our birth to the moment of our death. It requires no special belief, no complex philosophy, no external equipment. It is utterly simple and universally available. Most importantly, the breath is always happening now. You cannot take a breath in the past, nor can you take one in the future. To be aware of your breathing is to be anchored in the present moment, the only place where life is actually happening. It is the perfect tool to gently pull our attention out of the imaginary worlds of past regrets and future anxieties and bring us home to the reality of what is. This practice is far more than a simple relaxation technique. It is a profound training of the mind, a way of cultivating the mental qualities of stability, clarity, and kindness that are essential for navigating our lives with wisdom. The breath acts as a miraculous bridge between our body and our mind. When we are agitated, our breath becomes short, shallow, and rapid. When we are at peace, our breath is naturally long, deep, and slow. This connection works in both directions. By consciously bringing a gentle, steady attention to the breath, we can directly influence our mental and emotional state, calming the turbulent waters of the mind and soothing the nervous system. So, let us explore how to do this. This is not about achieving a special state, but about cultivating a special kind of attention. The first step is to find a posture that embodies both relaxation and dignity. You do not need to sit on the floor in a full lotus position unless that is comfortable for you. Sitting on a chair is perfectly fine. The key is to sit with your back upright but not rigid, like a mountain that is both solid and at ease. Allow your shoulders to relax, your hands to rest gently on your lap, and your chin to be slightly tucked, as if a thread were gently lifting the crown of your head towards the sky. Let your eyes softly close, or if you prefer, you can leave them slightly open with a soft, unfocused gaze towards the floor. Now, bring your attention to the intention you are setting. The attitude we bring to this practice is everything. We are not here to fight our minds, to force thoughts to stop, or to achieve some perfect state of silence. We are here to befriend our own experience with a gentle, patient, and curious attention. The key word is gentleness. Imagine you are trying to tame a frightened animal or comfort a small child. You would not use force or criticism. You would use kindness, patience, and a soft, allowing presence. This is the attitude we bring to our own minds. With this posture and this intention, you can now gently guide your attention to the physical sensations of your breathing. You can choose one spot to be your primary anchor. For some, this is the tip of the nostrils. You can feel the subtle sensation of the cool air entering as you breathe in, and the slightly warmer air leaving as you breathe out. For others, the anchor point is the abdomen. You can rest your hands there and feel the gentle rise of the belly on the in-breath and the gentle fall on the out-breath. Choose whichever spot feels clearest to you, and then gently rest your awareness there. Your only task is to feel the full duration of one inhalation and then the full duration of one exhalation. There is no need to control the breath, to make it deeper or slower. Just allow it to be exactly as it is. Feel the rhythm, the texture, the simple living reality of your body breathing. Now, something very important will happen. In fact, it is guaranteed to happen. Your mind will wander. After a few breaths, or perhaps only one, you will find that you are no longer feeling the breath. You are thinking. You are planning your dinner, replaying a conversation, worrying about a work project, or drifting in a daydream. This is the critical moment. Your first impulse might be to judge yourself, to think, I can't do this. I'm failing. My mind is too busy. This is the voice of the ego, the inner critic. But in mindfulness practice, this moment is not a failure. It is a golden opportunity. The moment you realize your mind has wandered is a moment of pure mindfulness. You have woken up from the dream of thought. The practice is not to never wander. The practice is in what you do next. And what you do next is exquisitely simple. Without any judgment or frustration, you gently acknowledge that you are thinking. You can even make a soft mental note, thinking or wandering. Then, with the same gentleness you would use to guide a lost puppy back home, you softly, kindly escort your attention back to the physical sensations of the breath. That's it. You breathe in, you breathe out. Your mind wanders. You notice. You gently return. This is the entire practice. This is the bicep curl for the muscle of your attention. There is a classic Buddhist parable that perfectly illustrates this process. The untamed mind is compared to a wild, powerful elephant. This elephant is used to charging through the jungle wherever its impulses take it, chasing after pleasant sights and sounds and running away from scary ones. If you were to try and chain this elephant down with brute force, it would become enraged and fight back, making the situation far worse. In our practice, the wild elephant is our mind. The sturdy post, set firmly in the ground, is the breath. The rope is our gentle, consistent attention. When we begin to meditate, we gently tie the elephant of the mind to the post of the breath with the rope of our attention. At first, the elephant will not like this. It will pull at the rope, straining to run back into the jungle of thoughts. It will trumpet and grow frustrated. But our job is not to whip the elephant. Our job is to simply ensure the rope is secure and to gently pat the elephant each time it returns to the post. Again and again, it will wander off. And again, we gently guide it back. Over time, something miraculous happens. The elephant begins to realize that the post is a safe place, a place of rest. It learns that it doesn't need to constantly chase and run. It calms down. It becomes peaceful and strong, content to simply be where it is. In the same way, by repeatedly and gently returning our attention to the breath, our mind learns to settle. It discovers a source of peace and stability in the present moment. This simple act of returning, again and again, to the anchor of the breath is the fundamental training. It builds the stability and clarity we need to navigate our inner world. Now that we have established this anchor, now that we have found a safe harbor in the present moment, we can begin to use this newfound stability to look more closely at the weather patterns of the mind itself. We can begin to observe the clouds of our thoughts as they drift through the sky of our awareness, without getting lost in the storm. Having established our breath as a faithful anchor, we have created a safe harbor in the present moment. From this place of relative stability, we can now begin the courageous work of looking more closely at the very thing that so often pulls us away, the relentless stream of our own thoughts. For most of us, our relationship with our mind is one of complete and unconscious fusion. We do not experience ourselves as having thoughts. We experience ourselves as being our thoughts. We are not the sky. We are the clouds. If a thought arises that says, "You are not good enough," we do not perceive it as a fleeting electrical event in the brain. We experience it as a fundamental truth about who we are. If a thought of worry about the future appears, we do not see it as a mental projection. We inhabit that future, feeling its anxiety as if it were already happening. We live inside our thoughts, looking out at the world through their distorted lenses, believing their commentary to be an accurate report of reality. This unquestioning belief in the content of our minds is the primary source of our psychological suffering. But Buddhist practice offers a radical and deeply liberating alternative. It invites us to make a profound shift in perspective, to learn to watch our thoughts instead of being them. The first step in this process is to deeply investigate and understand a simple but revolutionary idea. Your thoughts are not facts. Your mind is a thought-generating organ. Just as your stomach is a digestion-producing organ, it produces thoughts spontaneously, constantly, and often randomly. It is a biological process. Throughout the day, thousands of thoughts will drift through your awareness. Many of them will be nonsensical. Many will be based on outdated conditioning from your childhood, and many will directly contradict each other. In one moment, your mind might produce the thought, "I am confident and capable." 5 minutes later, after a minor setback, it might produce the thought, "I am a complete failure and can't do anything right." Which of these thoughts is the fact? The answer is neither. They are simply mental events. They are suggestions, pieces of commentary, bits of internal sound and imagery that arise and pass away. We would not believe that every single thing we hear on the street is an objective truth. So why do we grant that status to the random noise generated by our own minds? When we begin to see thoughts in this way, not as authoritative commands or statements of fact, but as transient mental weather, their power over us begins to dissolve. We can learn to relate to them with a light and curious touch, rather than with the heavy grip of absolute belief. The primary technique for cultivating this new relationship is the simple practice of noting or labeling. This is a skillful tool for creating distance. When you are lost in a thought, you are inside of it, swept away by its narrative. The moment you name it, you are stepping outside of it and looking at it. This creates a space, and in that space is freedom. The practice is straightforward. When you are sitting in meditation, anchored to your breath, and you notice that your mind has been carried away on a stream of thought, you simply make a soft, gentle, non-judgmental mental note of what was happening. The simplest and often most effective label is just the word thinking. You notice you've been lost in a story, and you whisper to yourself, thinking, and then you gently guide your awareness back to the sensations of the breath. As you become more familiar with the landscape of your mind, you might use more specific labels. If you find yourself caught in anxious loops about what might happen tomorrow, you can note worrying. If you are replaying a past event over and over, you can note remembering. If you are mentally composing an email or a grocery list, you can note planning. If you are comparing yourself to someone else, you can note comparing. If you are critiquing yourself or someone else, you can note judging. The tone of this labeling is crucial. It is not an accusation. It is a soft, gentle acknowledgement, like a scientist observing a phenomenon with neutral curiosity. Ah, there is planning happening. Or ah, this is the feeling of worrying. The act of naming the thought pattern in this way tames it. It takes it from being an all-encompassing reality that has possessed you and turns it into a manageable, observable event within your field of awareness. You are no longer the storm. You are the one watching the storm. As we continue this practice, it leads to one of the most profound insights of the path, the realization that there is no thinker behind the thoughts. We have a deeply ingrained assumption that there is a little person inside our head, a CEO or a pilot, who is authoring and directing all our thoughts. But when we look closely with mindful attention, can we find this thinker, or do thoughts simply appear? The practice reveals that thoughts, like sounds, arise spontaneously in the field of awareness. They are ownerless. The sense of a solid me who is doing all the thinking is, itself, just another thought that arises and passes away. There is a beautiful parable for this. Imagine a person sitting peacefully on the bank of a great river. The river represents the ceaseless flow of your mind, your stream of consciousness. Floating on the surface of the river are countless leaves of all shapes and sizes. These leaves are your thoughts, feelings, and sensations. The person's task is not to control the river. It is not to stop the leaves or change their course. The task is not to jump into the river and try to grab onto the beautiful leaves while pushing away the ugly ones. The task is simply to sit on the bank and watch. To watch as a leaf emerges into view upstream, floats past, and then disappears downstream. Sometimes we get so engrossed in a particularly interesting leaf, a powerful thought, or a strong memory that we forget we are sitting on the bank. We mentally jump into the river and get carried away by the current, tumbling over and over, completely lost. The practice of mindfulness is the gentle but radical act of remembering. In the midst of being swept away, we suddenly remember, oh, I am on the bank, and we find ourselves back in our seat, once again, simply watching the flow go by. This parable reveals a profound truth. You are not the leaves. You are not even the river. You are the silent, spacious, unmoving awareness that is witnessing the river. You are the sky, not the clouds. This understanding has a direct and powerful effect on the negative thought loops that fuel anxiety and depression. A state like depression is often sustained by rumination, by the same painful thoughts circling again and again, each time reinforcing their power and believability. A thought like "I am worthless" can become a deeply held conviction, but when we can apply this practice, a shift occurs. The thought "I am worthless" arises. Instead of being completely consumed by it, we can create a sliver of space and note, the "I am worthless" thought has appeared again. We can see it for what it is, a conditioned, habitual, painful mental event. It is a dark storm cloud passing through the vast sky of our awareness. We don't have to fight it. We don't have to believe it. We can simply allow it to be there, knowing that like all clouds, it will eventually change and pass in its own time. This profound shift in perspective, from being the thought to being the awareness of the thought, is a cornerstone of inner freedom. It allows us to relate to the contents of our minds with wisdom and non-reactivity. And just as we can learn to observe the clouds of thought passing through the sky of our awareness, we can apply this very same quality of mindful attention to the even more powerful and turbulent weather systems of our inner world, our emotions. Having learned to sit on the riverbank of our awareness, watching the leaves of our thoughts float by without being swept away, we can now turn our attention to the river's powerful currents. If thoughts are the clouds, then emotions are the weather itself. They are the electrical charge in the air, the gathering storm, the cleansing rain, the biting wind. For most of us, our relationship with this inner weather, especially when it is turbulent, is deeply dysfunctional. We typically react in one of two ways, both of which lead to more suffering. The first is suppression. When a difficult emotion like anger, fear, or shame arises, our first instinct is often to push it down, to pretend it isn't there. We distract ourselves with work. We numb ourselves with entertainment. We intellectualize the feeling away. This is like trying to hold a large beach ball underwater. It takes an enormous amount of constant energy to keep it submerged, and it makes us rigid and tense. And inevitably, our grip will slip, and the ball will erupt to the surface with even greater force, often at the most unexpected and inappropriate times. The second extreme is unrestrained expression. Here, instead of suppressing the emotion, we become completely possessed by it. We don't just feel anger, we become anger. We fuse with the energy and act it out, lashing out with sharp words, slamming doors, and creating harm for ourselves and others. We allow the storm to become our entire identity, leaving a trail of wreckage in its wake. Both of these approaches, suppression and blind expression, treat difficult emotions as an enemy to be either buried or fought. But there is a third way, a middle path of profound wisdom and compassion. This is the path of emotional alchemy. It is the art of learning how to meet our most difficult feelings, not with resistance or reactivity, but with mindful, courageous, and kind attention. It is a process that can transform the raw, painful lead of our emotional turmoil into the pure gold of wisdom and freedom. To begin this alchemy, we must first reframe what an emotion truly is. We tend to think of emotions as purely mental states, wrapped up in stories and judgments. But at its core, an emotion is a physical experience. The very word emotion can be understood as energy in motion. Every emotion has a distinct signature of physical sensations in the body. Anger might manifest as a burning heat in the chest, a tightness in the jaw, and clenched fists. Fear might feel like a cold, hollow knot in the stomach, a rapid heartbeat, and tension in the shoulders. Grief can feel like a heavy, aching weight in the heart, a lump in the throat, and a profound sense of fatigue. By learning to shift our attention from the mental story of the emotion, the thoughts about who is to blame, and why it's not fair to the direct, raw, physical sensations of the emotion in our body, we take a crucial step. We move out of the endlessly spinning narrative of the mind and ground ourselves in the felt reality of the body. This is where true transformation can occur. As a practical guide for this alchemical process, we can use a powerful and memorable mindfulness practice known by the acronym RAIN. RAIN offers us 4 clear steps to navigate the inner storms with grace and wisdom. The first step is R, for recognize. This is the simple, clear-seeing moment of mindfulness where we just acknowledge what is happening inside us. Instead of being lost in the emotion, we gently name it. Ah, this is anger. I recognize that fear is present. Sadness is here. This act of recognition is incredibly powerful. It cuts through the fog of our reactivity and brings a moment of clarity. We are no longer the anger. We are the one who is aware of the anger. We have already created a small space of freedom. The second step is A, for allow. This is perhaps the most radical and counterintuitive step. We give the emotion permission to be there. We stop fighting it. We drop the internal war. This does not mean we like the feeling or approve of it. It simply means we are courageously acknowledging the truth of our present moment experience. We are letting the beach ball gently float on the surface of the water. We can whisper to ourselves, "This is allowed," or "I can make space for this." In this step, we are surrendering to what is already here, and this act of surrender releases the enormous tension created by our resistance. The third step is I, for investigate. With a spirit of gentle, non-judgmental curiosity, we now turn our attention towards the emotion itself. The key here is to investigate not the story, but the physical sensations. We bring a kind, scientific curiosity to our inner experience. We can ask ourselves gentle questions like, what does this actually feel like as pure energy in my body? Where is it located? Is it heavy or light? Hot or cold? Vibrating, tingling, or numb? Is it a solid, monolithic block, or is it composed of smaller, shifting sensations? As we investigate in this embodied way, something amazing happens. The big, scary, solid monster of a feeling called anger or fear begins to lose its solidity. We see that it is not a static thing, but a dynamic, fluid process, a collection of changing energies. We are witnessing its impermanent nature directly, and this robs it of its power to intimidate us. The final and most healing step is N, for nurture. After we have recognized, allowed, and investigated this vulnerable, hurting place within us, we bring kindness to it. Nurturing is about consciously offering compassion to ourselves. We can ask the wounded part of ourselves, "What do you most need right now?" The answer that arises from the heart is often very simple. It needs to feel safe. It needs to feel accepted. It needs to feel loved. We can respond by placing a hand gently over our heart. or wherever the emotion is felt most strongly, as a gesture of comfort. We can offer ourselves words of kindness, whispering inwardly, "I'm so sorry this is so painful," or "It's okay, I am here with you, you are not alone." This act of self-compassion is the direct antidote to the self-judgment and shame that so often accompany our difficult emotions. It is the act of becoming our own best friend. The story of the Buddha and the fearsome murderer Angulimala serves as a powerful parable for this entire process. Angulimala was a terrifying figure, a man consumed by a murderous rage who wore a garland of his victim's fingers. He represents our most destructive, overwhelming emotions. Everyone fled from him in terror, just as we try to run from our own fear and pain. The king sent armies to conquer him, just as we try to aggressively fight and suppress our inner demons. The Buddha did something radically different. He walked calmly and mindfully towards the rage. When Angulimala charged at him, screaming threats, the Buddha did not run, nor did he fight back. He simply stood his ground, radiating an immense, unshakable field of peace and compassion. This powerful, loving presence completely disarmed the murderer. The rage had nothing to fight against, nothing to sustain it, and it collapsed in the face of such profound acceptance. In this story, we are the Buddha, or at least our mindful awareness is. Angulimala is our most difficult emotion. When we can learn to turn towards our inner demons with the steady, compassionate, and unwavering presence of rain, they too lose their power over us. Their raw energy is not destroyed, but transformed. This practice of meeting our pain with presence is how we turn the lead of suffering into the gold of wisdom. We learn that our anger is here to show us where our boundaries have been crossed. Our fear is here to show us what we care about protecting. Our sadness is here to show us what we have loved. This final step of nurture, this act of bringing intentional kindness and care to our own suffering, is not just one part of a technique. It is a profound practice in its own right, an active cultivation of the heart. This compassionate attention towards ourselves is the foundation for developing a boundless, radiant goodwill towards all beings. This practice is known as metta, or loving kindness. In our exploration of difficult emotions, we discovered the healing power of the fourth step of rain, the act of nurture. We found that by bringing a gentle, kind attention to our own pain, we could soothe and transform it. This act of self-compassion is the gateway to one of the most radiant and powerful practices of the heart, a practice that shifts us from simply dealing with negativity to actively cultivating positivity as a baseline state of being. This is the practice of metta, a word from the ancient Pali language that translates as loving kindness, friendship, or gentle goodwill. Metta is the radical act of training the heart. If mindfulness of breath trains the muscle of attention, metta trains the muscle of compassion. It is a practice that serves as a direct antidote to the poisons of the mind that cause so much of our suffering: anger, resentment, ill will, jealousy, and fear. It is like deliberately planting a garden of beautiful, fragrant flowers in the very soil where the weeds of bitterness and aversion once grew. It is important to understand what metta is not. It is not a sentimental, romantic love. It is not about forcing yourself to feel a certain way, nor is it about pretending you like everyone and everything. This would be inauthentic and draining. Rather, metta is an intention. It is the sincere, heartfelt wish for the well-being of oneself and others. It is the simple, powerful intention: may you be happy. You may not always feel loving, but you can always, with practice, generate the wish for beings to be well. This distinction is the key to its accessibility and its power. The practice traditionally begins in the place where it is often most difficult, with ourselves. We cannot offer water to others from an empty well. So many of us are conditioned by an inner critic that constantly tells us we are not good enough, that we are unworthy of love and happiness. The practice of metta for oneself is a direct and gentle rebellion against this inner tyranny. To begin, find a comfortable and dignified posture, the same way you would for mindfulness of breath. Allow your body to settle and your breath to flow naturally. Then, you can bring to mind an image of yourself. It can be helpful to visualize yourself as a small, innocent child, full of vulnerability and deserving of love and protection. Or you can simply generate a felt sense of your own presence, the living, breathing being that you are. Then, you begin to silently, gently, offer yourself phrases of loving kindness. The traditional phrases are a beautiful starting point. You can repeat them softly in your mind, timing them with your breath if you wish. May I be safe. May I be free from inner and outer harm. May I be healthy. May I be as healthy and strong as it is possible for me to be. May I be happy. May I be truly happy and deeply peaceful. May I live with ease. May my life be filled with a sense of well-being and grace. As you repeat these phrases, the goal is not to force a particular feeling to arise. The goal is simply to offer the intention. You are planting seeds in the garden of your own heart. At first, you may feel nothing, or you may even feel resistance, which is perfectly normal. Simply notice that resistance and continue to gently offer the phrases anyway. You are holding yourself in a container of kind intention, perhaps for the first time in your life. This act alone begins to soften the hard, frozen places within us. Once you have spent some time offering metta to yourself, you can begin to expand the circle of your goodwill. The next stage is to bring to mind a benefactor or a dear friend. This should be someone for whom it is very easy to feel warmth and appreciation. A beloved friend, a cherished family member, a respected teacher, or even a beloved pet. Bring their image clearly into your mind's eye. See them smiling, feel their presence, and then offer them the very same phrases you offered to yourself. May you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be happy. May you live with ease. Notice how the heart responds. Often, when directing metta to a loved one, we can feel the warmth and goodwill flowing much more easily. This helps us to connect with the feeling of metta itself. After the dear friend, we expand the circle further to include a neutral person. Bring to mind someone you see regularly, but have no strong feelings about one way or another. It could be the person who serves you coffee in the morning, a cashier at the grocery store, or a colleague you don't know well. We so often walk through our lives treating these people as if they are merely part of the scenery. This stage of the practice challenges our indifference. Hold this person in your mind and see them as a full human being, just like you. Just like you, this person wants to be happy. Just like you, this person wants to be free from suffering. And with this recognition of your shared humanity, you offer them the same wishes. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you live with ease. This practice dissolves the walls of separation and helps us feel more connected to the world around us. Now comes the most challenging and often the most transformative stage, offering metta to a difficult person. It is wise to start with someone who is only mildly irritating, not the source of your deepest trauma. Bring this person to mind. Acknowledge the difficult feelings that may arise, and then see if you can look at them through the lens of compassion. This person, too, is a suffering being. Their unskillful actions, the words or deeds that have hurt you, almost certainly come from their own inner pain, their own fear, their own confusion. The practice here is not about condoning their behavior or forcing a reconciliation. It is about freeing yourself. Holding on to anger and resentment is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. Offering metta is the antidote that you take for your own healing. With whatever sincerity you can muster, you offer the phrases, may you be safe, may you be happy, may you be well. If this feels too difficult, you can adjust the phrase, I wish you no harm, or may you be free from the causes of your own suffering. This is a profound act of letting go of the burden of hatred. Finally, you let the circle become boundless. You extend the wish of metta to all beings, everywhere, without exception. First, to all beings in the room with you, then in your building, your city, your country, then to all beings on the planet, all people of all nations, all cultures, all backgrounds, and then beyond the human realm, to all animals, all creatures big and small, in the air, on the land, and in the sea, to all beings in all realms, seen and unseen. You can use the all-encompassing phrase, may all beings be safe, may all beings be happy, may all beings be free. At this stage, you are cultivating a heart that is like the sun. The sun does not choose who or what it will shine upon. It radiates its warmth in all directions, without discrimination. It shines on the beautiful flower and the thorny weed, on the palace and the prison, on the saint and the sinner. Metta practice is the cultivation of this inner sun, a boundless, unconditional goodwill that radiates from our own heart. Modern neuroscience is now confirming the wisdom of this ancient practice, showing that regular loving-kindness meditation actually rewires the brain. It strengthens the neural pathways associated with empathy, positive emotions, and emotional regulation, while calming the fear centers of the amygdala. It literally changes our default setting from one of threat and contraction to one of openness and connection. As we cultivate this inner sun of loving kindness, this unconditional warmth, it naturally begins to melt away the frozen holdings of our own hearts. It softens our grip on old hurts, on rigid opinions, and on our desperate need for things to be a certain way. This softening, this releasing of our tight-fisted grip on reality, is the essence of one of the most vital arts on the spiritual path, the art of letting go. The practice of metta, of cultivating a warm and friendly heart, begins to soften the world within us and around us. It is like a gentle spring thaw, melting the ice of our resentment and fear. As this inner landscape softens, we are better able to practice one of the most essential and often misunderstood arts on the spiritual path, the art of letting go. The phrase letting go is spoken of so often that its true meaning can become diluted. We are told to just let it go as if it were as simple as flipping a switch. This can lead to a belief that letting go means being passive, becoming apathetic, or stuffing our feelings down in an act of spiritual bypassing, pretending we are fine when we are not. But true letting go is none of these things. It is not an act of weakness, but one of profound strength and courage. It is not about pushing something away. It is about ceasing to cling to it. Imagine the difference between a clenched fist and an open hand. The clenched fist is tight, rigid, defensive, and full of effort. It cannot receive anything new, nor can it offer anything of value. This is the state of clinging. The open hand is relaxed, receptive, and ready. It can both give and receive with ease. This is the state of letting go. Our suffering arises from this clenching, this resistance to the natural flow of life. This resistance manifests in two ways, which are two sides of the same coin. On one side, we have clinging, or attachment. When something pleasant comes into our lives, we grasp it with a clenched fist. We cling to pleasant moments, to praise, to relationships, to youth, trying to make them permanent in a world that is defined by impermanence. On the other side, we have aversion, or pushing away. When something unpleasant arises, we also react with a clenched fist, trying to fight it, to push it out of our experience. We resist difficult emotions, challenging people, and painful truths. Letting go is the middle path between these two extremes of grasping and pushing. It is the conscious and courageous act of unclenching the fist of the mind and allowing life to flow through our open hand without our desperate need to manage, control, or manipulate it. A crucial distinction must be made here. Letting go is not the same as having no goals or intentions. It is healthy and wise to have aspirations. You can work diligently to build a business, to create a beautiful piece of art, or to raise a loving family. The practice of letting go does not ask you to abandon your efforts. It asks you to abandon your rigid attachment to the outcome. The suffering comes when we believe our happiness is entirely dependent on achieving one specific result, in one specific way, in one specific time frame. We fuse our sense of self-worth with the outcome, and in doing so, we become prisoners of our own expectations. There is a classic parable that brilliantly illustrates this dynamic. It is the story of the monkey trap. In some parts of the world, hunters have a very clever way of catching monkeys. They take a coconut or a hollow gourd, cut a small hole in it, just large enough for a monkey's open hand to fit through, and then tether the gourd to a stake in the ground. Inside the gourd, they place a handful of rice or some other sweet treat. Sooner or later, a monkey comes along. It smells the treat, slips its slender hand into the gourd, and grasps the rice, making a fist. But now, it has a problem. The hole is too small for its clenched fist to pass through. It pulls and pulls, it screeches and struggles, but it cannot get its hand out. It is trapped. The hunters can then simply walk up and capture it. All the monkey has to do to be free, at any moment, is to open its hand and let go of the rice. But its desire, its attachment, its clinging to the prize is so powerful that it sacrifices its very freedom for a trivial handful of grain. We are all this monkey, and the rice represents all the things we cling to so desperately in our own lives. It is our resentment towards someone who hurt us years ago. It is our desperate need to be seen as right in an argument. It is our rigid idea of how our life or our children's lives should turn out. It is our attachment to a youthful identity in an aging body. It is our fear of the future and our regret about the past. We hold on to these things with a clenched fist, believing they are valuable, believing they are part of who we are. And all the while, it is this very act of clinging that keeps us trapped, anxious, and in a state of suffering. Freedom is always available to us. It lies in the simple, yet profoundly difficult, act of unclenching our hand. Letting go is not just a mental concept. It is a deeply physical experience. You can feel the difference in your own body right now. Take a moment and deliberately make a tight fist with one of your hands. Squeeze it hard. Feel the tension that radiates up your wrist, into your forearm, into your shoulder. Feel the hardness, the rigidity, the subtle sense of opposition. This is the energetic signature of clinging, of resistance. Now, slowly, mindfully, open your hand. Let your fingers unfurl. Feel the release of tension. Feel the blood flow back into your palm. Feel the sense of softness, of spaciousness, of readiness. This is the physical feeling of letting go. We can use our body as a guide. Throughout the day, we can notice the moments when we are physically clenching. A tight jaw during a stressful meeting, hunched shoulders as we race to meet a deadline, a knotted stomach when we feel fear. These are all signals from our body that our mind is clinging to something. When we notice this, we can consciously invite a softening. We can relax the jaw, drop the shoulders, breathe into the belly. As the body lets go, it sends a powerful message to the mind that it is safe to let go too. So, what is it that we practice letting go of? We practice letting go of the past. This does not mean we forget what happened or condone harmful actions. It means we release the heavy burden of our stories. We let go of the endless loop of what if and if only. We let go of the futile hope for a better past. We acknowledge what happened, learn from it, and then we turn our energy to the present. We practice letting go of the future. This does not mean we don't plan or act with wisdom. It means we release our anxious obsession with trying to control what is fundamentally uncontrollable. We do our best. We plant good seeds, and then we let go of our attachment to a specific harvest, finding a deep peace in resting with uncertainty. We practice letting go of our fixed identities. We release our tight grip on needing to be seen as the smart one, or the successful one, or the spiritual one. We allow ourselves the freedom to be complex, to change, to be imperfect, to be human. We let go of the beautiful house the ego built, so we can finally live freely in the world. Ultimately, we practice letting go of our need for control. This is the deepest letting go of all. It is the full, embodied acceptance of impermanence. It is the wisdom of recognizing that we can only ever be responsible for our own intentions and our own actions, not the vast, intricate, and mysterious unfolding of life itself. This art of letting go applies to our hopes, our fears, and our identities. But one of the most difficult things to release our grip on is our judgment and resentment towards others, especially those who have caused us pain. To truly let go in this domain requires more than just willpower. It requires the cultivation of a heart that actively understands and responds to suffering. This deeper quality is known as karuna, or compassion. The art of letting go frees us from the heavy burdens of our own past, our own anxieties, and our own resentments. It is a profound act of self-care, but as we walk through the world with an open heart, we are inevitably confronted with the reality of pain and suffering in the lives of others. In these moments, simply letting go is not the most noble response. When we see a friend in grief, a stranger in distress, or a world in turmoil, the heart that has been softened by metta and opened by letting go is called not to turn away, but to lean in. This leaning in, this trembling of the heart in the face of suffering, is the practice of karuna, the Sanskrit and Pali word for compassion. If metta, or loving kindness, is the sincere wish for all beings to be happy, karuna is its inseparable twin, the sincere wish for all beings to be free from suffering. They are the two wings that allow the heart to fly. It is vital to understand the difference between true compassion and its paler cousins, pity and empathy. Pity looks down from above. It says, "Oh, you poor thing," and in doing so, it creates a sense of separation and superiority. Pity reinforces the ego's position of being the one who is okay, looking at the one who is not. Empathy is the ability to feel with another person, to resonate with their emotional state. It is a crucial human capacity and the gateway to compassion, but empathy alone can be overwhelming. If we simply absorb the pain of the world without a way to process or transform it, we risk being drowned in it, leading to burnout and what is often called compassion fatigue. True karuna, true compassion, is something more robust. It is empathy in action. It is feeling the pain of another, and from that feeling arises the powerful, heartfelt motivation to help alleviate that pain. It marries the tenderness of an open heart with the clear-seeing wisdom of a calm mind. It is not weak. It is courageous. It is not draining. It is the source of boundless energy because it connects us to the deepest wellspring of our shared humanity. The very root of compassion is the recognition that we are all in this together. The ego, as we have seen, thrives on creating a sense of separation, my life, my problems, my pain. Compassion dissolves these walls. It looks at another suffering being and understands, on a level deeper than words. Just like me, this person knows pain. Just like me, this person has experienced loss. Just like me, this person is frightened and confused at times. And just like me, this person wants to be free from this suffering. This recognition of our shared vulnerability is the soil in which all compassion grows. There is no story that illustrates this transformative journey from personal grief to universal compassion more beautifully than that of Kisa Gautami. Kisa Gautami was a young woman whose first and only child had died. Consumed by a frantic, desperate grief, she refused to accept the reality of his death. Clutching his small, lifeless body, she wandered through her village, from house to house, begging for a medicine that could bring him back. Some mocked her, Some ignored her, but one wise person directed her to the Buddha. She burst before him, laid the child at his feet, and pleaded for his help. The Buddha, in his infinite wisdom, did not offer her empty platitudes or dismiss her pain. He met her with calm, present attention and said, "There is only one thing I need to make the medicine. Go back into the village and bring me a single mustard seed from a house where no one has ever known death." Filled with a surge of hope, Kisa Gotami began her search once more. At the first house, she asked for the mustard seed, and the family readily offered it. But when she asked the vital question, "Has anyone in this house ever died?" they looked at her with sorrowful eyes and said, "The living are few, but the dead are many. Do not remind us of our deepest grief." She went to the next house, and the next, and the next. Everywhere she went, the story was the same. A husband lost to illness, a parent lost to old age, a beloved child taken too soon. Every door she knocked on opened into a home of shared sorrow. As the sun began to set, she sat down by the side of the road, her arms still empty of a mustard seed, but her heart now full of a profound and earth-shattering realization. Her pain, which she thought was a unique and personal curse, was in fact the universal inheritance of all beings who love. Her isolated, frantic grief for my child melted away into a vast, boundless compassion for the sorrow of all parents, all families, all human beings. She was no longer alone. In seeing her suffering reflected in every home, her heart broke open, and in that breaking, it expanded to embrace the entire world. This is the birth of Karuna. To practice and strengthen this muscle of compassion, there is a powerful Tibetan Buddhist practice called Tonglen, which means giving and taking. This is a courageous and transformative practice that directly reverses our usual pattern of seeking pleasure and avoiding pain. To begin, you can sit quietly and center yourself with the breath. First, you can practice on yourself. As you breathe in, you visualize breathing in your own suffering, your anxiety, your fear, your physical pain. Imagine it as a dark, heavy, smoky cloud. You courageously draw this smoke into the center of your heart. In your heart, you imagine a brilliant, indestructible flame, or a diamond of light, which represents your own innate goodness and compassion. The instant the dark smoke touches this light, it is instantly purified and transformed. Then, as you breathe out whatever you most need. You breathe out a clear, radiant, white light of peace, of calm, of healing, of spaciousness. You breathe in the pain, you transform it in your heart, and you breathe out the relief. After practicing on yourself, you can extend the practice to others. Bring to mind someone you know who is suffering. As you breathe in, imagine you are taking on their pain, their fear, their illness, drawing it out of them and into your own heart as that dark smoke. Let it be consumed and purified by the light of your compassion. And as you breathe out, send them all of your peace, your health, your happiness, your light. Bathe them in this healing radiance. You can do this for loved ones, for strangers, for animals, and even for those you consider enemies. It is important to know that this is not a literal, magical transfer of suffering. You will not become sick by breathing in another's illness. Tonglen is a profound training of the mind and heart. It trains us to be brave, to move towards suffering with an open heart instead of away from it with fear. It strengthens our conviction that our compassion is more powerful than any pain. This practice is the ultimate antidote to the ego. The entire structure of the ego is built on the foundation of self-cherishing, of prioritizing me above all else. Tonglen systematically dismantles this structure. By willingly breathing in the pain of others and selflessly sending them our happiness, the tight knot of self-obsession begins to unravel. We discover a profound truth. Our own suffering diminishes when we focus our hearts on alleviating the suffering of others. It gives us perspective. It gives us purpose, and it connects us to the vast web of life in a way that our own small story never could. This courageous practice of compassion, of leaning into sorrow, is one of the most profound expressions of a liberated heart. But to maintain a healthy balance, this willingness to be with pain must be paired with the ability to genuinely celebrate joy. To only focus on suffering can lead to heaviness. Therefore, we must also cultivate the third of the great heart practices, mudita, or sympathetic joy. We have walked the courageous path of karuna, learning to open our hearts to the reality of suffering, both our own and that of others. This practice develops a profound tenderness and a fearless heart. But a heart that is only open to sorrow can become heavy and overburdened. To maintain a healthy and holistic balance, the spiritual path requires us to be as skilled at opening to joy as we are at opening to pain. This brings us to the third of the four great qualities of the heart, the four divine abodes. It is the practice of mudita, which translates as sympathetic or unselfish joy. If metta is the wish for beings to be happy, and karuna is the wish for them to be free from suffering, mudita is the practice of genuinely delighting in the happiness and good fortune they actually achieve. It is the heart's celebration. For many of us, this can be the most challenging of all the heart practices. It is one thing to feel compassion for someone who is suffering. Our protective instincts are naturally activated. It is quite another to feel genuine, unadulterated joy for someone who is succeeding, especially if their success highlights our own perceived failures. The primary obstacle to mudita is the deeply ingrained habit of the ego, the habit of comparison. From a very young age, we are trained to compare ourselves to others in school, in sports, in our careers, and in our social lives. This conditioning fosters a subtle but pervasive belief that life is a competition. The ego operates from what can be called a poverty mentality or a scarcity mindset. It believes that happiness, success, and love are limited resources. It sees life as a zero-sum game. If someone else gets a major promotion, if a friend enters a wonderful new relationship, if a sibling receives praise, the ego's first reaction is often a painful clenching, a feeling that their gain is somehow our loss. It's as if there is only one pie of happiness, and every slice someone else takes means there is less left for us. This corrosive mindset is amplified to an unbearable degree in our modern world, particularly through the lens of social media. We are constantly scrolling through a meticulously curated highlight reel of other people's lives. We see their perfect vacations, their beautiful homes, their brilliant children, their thriving careers. Our comparison mind goes into overdrive, and the inevitable result is a feeling of inadequacy, of being left behind. This gives rise to the painful poison of envy. Envy is a unique form of suffering. It is a double torment. First, we are not experiencing the happiness that the other person is having. Second, we add a fresh layer of our own pain on top of it, the bitter, lonely, and isolating feeling of jealousy. It disconnects us from others and traps us in the small, dark prison of our own perceived lack. Mudita is the key that unlocks this prison door. It is the conscious, intentional practice of training our minds to rejoice in the good fortune of others. Like metta, it is a skill we can cultivate. We begin, as always, where it is easiest. Find a comfortable posture and settle your mind. Then, bring to mind a person you love dearly, someone whose happiness genuinely makes you happy. It could be a close friend, a child, or a partner. Now, recall a specific instance of their success or joy. Perhaps they achieved a lifelong goal, recovered from an illness, or were simply filled with a moment of pure, unbridled delight. Hold that image and that feeling in your heart. Instead of letting your mind drift, you consciously participate in their joy. You celebrate with them, and you can use phrases to guide your heart, silently wishing them, "I am so happy for you. What a wonderful thing to happen." May your happiness and success continue. May your joy increase and never fade. Feel the natural warmth that arises in your own heart as you do this. This is the feeling of mudita. It is a shared joy, a connection in happiness. Next, we stretch the muscle of mudita by directing it towards a neutral person. Bring to mind that person you often see but don't know well, the mail carrier, a neighbor, someone at the gym. Now, use your imagination to picture something wonderful happening for them. Perhaps they received some unexpected good news, or they are simply enjoying a beautiful, peaceful day with their family. See them smiling, their face lit up with happiness, and then you share in that imagined joy. You offer them the same well wishes. I am happy for your happiness. May you have many moments like this. This practice works against our tendency to be indifferent to the vast majority of people we encounter, weaving a thread of joyful connection between us and the strangers we share our world with. The most potent and transformative stage of the practice is to then try and offer mudita to someone whose success has been a source of envy for you. This could be a professional rival, a friend whose life seems to be going more smoothly than yours, or anyone whose good fortune has triggered that painful clenching of comparison in your own heart. This requires courage. First, acknowledge the feeling of envy. Don't judge it, just see it for what it is, a painful habit of the mind. Then, see if you can gently shift your perspective. Acknowledge their hard work, their talent, or simply their good luck. Try to see their happiness not as a threat to your own, but simply as happiness existing in the world. And then, with as much authenticity as you can summon, form the intention. I rejoice in your good fortune. May you continue to be happy. This act is profoundly liberating. It is not for them. It is for you. It frees you from the self-inflicted poison of jealousy and allows you to participate in the joy of the world instead of feeling excluded from it. This practice shatters the ego's scarcity mindset. We begin to realize that joy is not a limited resource. It is infinite. By learning to delight in the happiness of others, we suddenly have access to an unlimited supply. Our capacity for joy is no longer restricted to the infrequent moments of our own personal success. We can now tap into the joy of every being we meet. The happiness of a child playing in the park becomes our happiness. The success of a colleague becomes our success. The beauty of a stranger's wedding becomes our beauty. Our heart becomes a vast field capable of celebrating the boundless joy of the entire universe. There is a parable that speaks to this. Imagine a magnificent garden filled with thousands of different flowers. A radiant red rose does not look at the tall, elegant sunflower and feel envy. The sunflower does not resent the delicate fragrance of the jasmine. The jasmine does not feel inadequate next to the vibrant colors of the tulips. Each flower has its own unique conditions, its own unique beauty, its own time and way of blooming. The blooming of one flower does not take away from the others. In fact, it adds to the breathtaking, overwhelming beauty of the entire garden, a beauty that can be enjoyed by all. We are these flowers. Our happiness and success are our blooming. When we are trapped in the ego of comparison, we are like a single flower, wanting to be the only beautiful one in the garden. When we practice mudita, we realize we are the garden itself. We learn to celebrate the unique and beautiful blooming of every single flower, knowing that each one contributes to the magnificent whole. By cultivating loving kindness, compassion, and sympathetic joy, we have developed a heart that is incredibly resilient and open. It can wish for the happiness of others, it can bear their sorrows, and it can celebrate their successes. Yet, to navigate the endless ups and downs of life, the praise and blame, the gain and loss without being constantly thrown off balance, this responsive heart needs a foundation of profound stability. This unshakable peace, the fourth and final of the divine abodes, is known as upekkha, or equanimity. We have journeyed through the sublime landscapes of the heart, cultivating metta, the wish for all to be happy, karuna, the wish for all to be free from sorrow, and mudita, the ability to rejoice in the good fortune of others. These three practices create a heart that is boundlessly loving, deeply compassionate, and joyfully connected. Yet, even a heart so open can be tossed about on the turbulent seas of life. To be a true refuge for ourselves and for others, this radiant, responsive heart needs a foundation of profound stability. It needs an anchor in the depths of being that can hold it steady regardless of the weather on the surface. This stabilizing force, the fourth and final of the four divine abodes, is known as upekkha, the Pali word for equanimity. If the other three qualities are the radiant light of the heart, equanimity is the vast, open space in which that light can shine. It is the crown of the heart practices, bringing them into perfect balance. It is the profound and unshakable peace that dwells in the eye of the hurricane, a silent, spacious calm at the very center of life's raging storms. The most critical and immediate point to understand about equanimity is what it is not. It is not indifference. This is a common and dangerous misunderstanding of the spiritual path. Indifference is a state of contraction, of emotional shutdown. It is a defense mechanism born of fear. It says, "I will not care, because if I care, I might get hurt." Indifference builds a wall around the heart. It is cold, distant, and disconnected. Upekkha, or true equanimity, is the exact opposite. It is not a wall, but an infinite horizon. It is a state of radical openness, of profound intimacy with reality as it is. Equanimity is not born of fear, it is born of wisdom and love. It arises from a heart that has been so thoroughly opened by metta, karuna, and mudita that it is vast enough to hold all of life's experiences without needing to push or pull, without needing to grasp or resist. Indifference is cold. Equanimity is warm and caring. It cares deeply about the world, but it understands the limits of its control. It loves fiercely, but it does not cling. It acts to relieve suffering, but it is not attached to the results of its actions. Equanimity is the wisdom that can love, grieve, celebrate, and act, all while remaining rooted in a deep, abiding peace. This wisdom allows us to skillfully navigate what Buddhism calls the 8 worldly winds. These are the 8 conditions, arranged in 4 pairs of opposites, that constantly blow through every human life, pushing and pulling an untrained mind in every direction. The first pair is pleasure and pain. Our lives are a constant flux of pleasant and unpleasant feelings, sensations, and experiences. The second is gain and loss. We gain wealth, possessions, relationships, and status, and we inevitably lose them. The third is praise and blame. We are admired, complimented, and approved of, and we are criticized, judged, and disapproved of. The fourth pair is fame and disrepute. We experience moments of success, recognition, and having a good reputation, and we experience moments of failure, obscurity, and having a poor reputation. A mind without equanimity is completely at the mercy of these winds. It is like a small, rudderless boat on a stormy sea. When the winds of praise, gain, pleasure, and fame are blowing, we are lifted high on a wave of elation and pride. We feel happy, secure, and invincible. But when the winds inevitably change direction, as they always do, and we are met with blame, loss, pain, and disrepute, we are plunged into the trough of the wave, into despair, anxiety, and grief. Our happiness is fragile, utterly dependent on getting the pleasant winds and avoiding the unpleasant ones, a strategy that is doomed to fail. Equanimity is the deep inner ballast that keeps our ship stable, no matter which way the winds are blowing. It is the profound wisdom that understands that all 8 of these conditions are impermanent, impersonal, and not a true measure of our worth or well-being. The person of equanimity can receive praise without becoming arrogant, because they know it is fleeting. They can receive blame without being crushed, because their self-worth is not dependent on the opinions of others. They can experience gain without greedy attachment, and they can experience loss without being shattered by despair. Their peace is not contingent on the weather. It comes from the depths of the ocean itself. This profound stability is not something we can simply will into existence. It is a quality that grows naturally out of the fertile soil of our dedicated practice. The mindfulness we cultivate by watching our breath and our thoughts allows us to see the impermanent nature of the 8 worldly winds directly. We watch pleasure arise and pass away. We watch a painful feeling come and go. We see a thought of praise enter the mind and vanish. This direct seeing weakens our tendency to react, to grasp, and to resist. The heart practices of metta, karuna, and mudita create a heart so vast and open that it can hold all of these experiences. A small cup of water will be violently disturbed by a single stone. The great ocean can receive a massive boulder with barely a ripple. When our heart is as vast as the ocean, the stones of praise and blame, gain and loss, make very small ripples. The classic parable for equanimity is that of a great mountain. Picture in your mind a vast, ancient mountain, its base rooted deep in the earth, its peak soaring into the sky. The fiercest gales howl against its slopes, tearing at the trees, but the mountain itself is not moved. The heaviest monsoon rains pour down its face, carving new gullies, but the mountain is not washed away. The most scorching sun of summer beats down upon it, and the deepest snows of winter blanket it in white, but through it all, the mountain remains, solid, stable, majestic, unshakable in its own quiet presence. It does not complain about the rain or grow arrogant in the sun. It simply is, present for all of it. Our practice is to cultivate this mountain-like quality of mind. It is to become so grounded in the truth of our own being that we are no longer swayed by the ever-changing weather patterns of our life. So how do we practice this in our daily lives? The practice begins with noticing when we are being pulled. Notice the subtle puffing up of the ego when someone gives you a compliment. Feel that little surge of pride. That is the wind of praise. Notice the sting, the contraction, the defensive posture that arises when you are criticized or blamed. That is the wind of blame. In the moment you notice you are being affected, you have a choice. You can pause, take a conscious breath, come back to the anchor of your physical body. Remember the vast, open sky of awareness you have cultivated. Can you feel the praise or the blame simply as energy, as a passing weather pattern, without letting it define who you are? Can you hold it in a spacious awareness, like the mountain holding the weather? A simple reflection can be very powerful here. This too is impermanent. This too shall pass. This reminds us not to become attached to the pleasant feelings, nor to become devastated by the unpleasant ones. Equanimity is the fruit of a well-trained mind and an open heart. It is the deep inner peace that allows us to engage with the world fully, with love and compassion, but without being a slave to its changing conditions. With this balanced and spacious mind, we are now prepared to look not just at our inner states, but at how we skillfully engage with the world through our volitional acts. We are ready to understand the natural law that governs the consequences of our actions, the law of karma. With a heart established in the spacious, balanced peace of equanimity, we can now turn our attention from the inner world of our being to the outer world of our becoming. We can look with clarity and courage at the way we move through the world, the choices we make, and the consequences that ripple out from those choices. This brings us to one of the most widely known, yet deeply misunderstood, concepts in all of Eastern philosophy, the law of karma. In the popular imagination, karma is often viewed as a kind of cosmic bookkeeping system, a celestial form of justice that ensures bad people get punished and good people get rewarded. It is often used as a synonym for fate or destiny, a predetermined script for our lives that we are powerless to change. But the true Buddhist understanding of karma is far more subtle, scientific, and profoundly empowering. The word karma, or karma in the Pali language, literally means action. That is all. It is not a mysterious force outside of us that is pulling the strings. It is the very law of cause and effect, as it relates to our own volitional actions. It is less like a court of law, and more like the law of gravity. If you hold a stone and let it go, it will fall. This is not a punishment or a reward. It is simply the natural consequence of the action. In the same way, our actions have natural, built-in consequences. Every intentional action we perform through our body, our speech, or our mind is like planting a seed. An action rooted in kindness, generosity, and clarity is a healthy seed, which will naturally ripen into an experience of well-being. An action rooted in greed, hatred, and confusion is a poisoned seed, which will inevitably ripen into an experience of suffering. This is not a judgment from an external God. It is the simple, impersonal nature of reality. The harvest is contained within the seed. The Buddha's most radical and crucial teaching on this subject was that karma is, at its very core, intention. He said, "It is intention, O monks, that I call karma. Having intended, one acts through body, speech, and mind." This places the entire weight of our spiritual life, not on our external behaviors, but on the inner quality of our heart. The world outside of us may be chaotic and uncontrollable, but the one thing we can learn to cultivate and control is the intention behind our actions. Consider this. A surgeon takes a scalpel and cuts into a person's body. A mugger takes a knife and cuts into a person's body. The physical action is almost identical, but the intention is worlds apart. The surgeon acts with an intention of compassion, of healing, and of care. The karmic seed of this action is wholesome and will lead to a positive result. The mugger acts with an intention of greed and violence. The karmic seed is unwholesome and will lead to a painful result. The universe does not judge the knife. It responds to the quality of the heart holding the knife. We can see this in our own lives. We can give a gift out of genuine love and a desire to bring joy, or we can give the exact same gift out of a sense of obligation, or a desire to be seen as generous, or to make someone feel indebted to us. The outer world sees only the gift, but the law of karma responds to the inner texture of the intention. Actions rooted in the wholesome states. We have been cultivating loving kindness, compassion, generosity, and wisdom plant the seeds for future happiness. Actions rooted in what Buddhism calls the three poisons: greed, the insatiable desire for more; hatred, the energy of aversion and ill will; and delusion, the fundamental ignorance of the way things truly are, plant the seeds for future suffering. The quality of our heart is the quality of our karma. This law operates across time, which helps us to understand our present circumstances with wisdom rather than with blame. The conditions of our present life, our personality, our innate talents, our deep-seated emotional patterns, the family and country we are born into, can be seen as the ripening of karmic seeds planted in the past, in this life, and even, according to Buddhist cosmology, in previous lives. This perspective allows us to let go of the "why me" narrative. It is not random chance, nor is it the arbitrary will of a god. It is simply the harvest of causes and conditions that have been set in motion long ago. But this is absolutely not a doctrine of fatalism. While our present is conditioned by our past, our future is not set in stone. The most important moment in the law of karma is always right now. This present moment is the only time we can plant new seeds. While we are experiencing the harvest of our past actions, we are, with every intentional thought, word, and deed, simultaneously planting the seeds for our future harvest. This is the ultimate teaching of empowerment. It places the key to our happiness and our liberation directly into our own hands. We are not the helpless victims of a predetermined fate. We are the active creators of our reality, moment by moment by moment. We can stop blaming the world, our parents, our boss, or our circumstances for our state of mind. We take radical responsibility, recognizing that our happiness and suffering are determined, above all, by the quality of our own intentions. Imagine a wise farmer. He knows that the quality of his future harvest depends entirely on the quality of the seeds he chooses to plant today. He carefully inspects his seeds, separating the healthy, vibrant ones from the ones that are shriveled or rotten. He prepares the soil of his field, diligently pulling out the weeds of hatred and greed, and enriching it with the compost of kindness and wisdom. He plants the wholesome seeds with care and tends to them patiently, knowing that the harvest will come in its own time. He does not blame the sky for a poor crop if he knows he has planted poor seeds. Now imagine an unwise farmer. He carelessly throws whatever seeds he can find onto unprepared, rocky ground. He does not tend the field, allowing the weeds of his own negativity to choke out any potential growth. Then, when his harvest is meager and bitter, he complains about his bad luck and curses the world for his misfortune. In this parable, we are the farmer. Our mind is the field. Our intentions are the seeds. Karma teaches us that we have the power, right now, to choose which seeds we will plant. Will we plant seeds of anger or seeds of patience, seeds of jealousy or seeds of sympathetic joy, seeds of fear or seeds of compassion? Every moment offers us this choice. Karma is not a system of punishment. It is a call to awaken. It invites us to become conscious farmers of our own lives, to take responsibility for the garden of our heart. This profound understanding of karma, the law of cause and effect, naturally gives rise to a powerful question. If my actions create my reality, then how can I learn to act in a way that consistently leads to happiness and freedom for myself and for others? How can I live skillfully? The Buddha's answer to this question is not a set of rigid commandments, but a beautiful, comprehensive, and practical guide for living. It is a path that avoids all extremes, a path known as the Noble Eightfold Path, or the Middle Way. The law of karma reveals a profound truth. Our actions, rooted in our intentions, are the primary architects of our reality. This understanding is both sobering and incredibly empowering. It takes the key to our happiness out of the fickle hands of fate and places it squarely into our own. This naturally gives rise to the most practical question on the spiritual path. If my choices create my world, then how do I choose wisely? How do I think, speak, and act in a way that skillfully and consistently leads away from suffering and towards freedom for both myself and for others? The Buddha's answer to this question is his most significant practical teaching. It is not a set of rigid doctrines to be believed, nor a list of divine commandments to be blindly obeyed. It is a graceful, comprehensive, and deeply psychological blueprint for living a sane, ethical, and awakened life. This blueprint is the fourth noble truth, the truth of the path leading to the cessation of suffering. It is called the Noble Eightfold Path. This path is also known as the Middle Way. To understand the significance of this, we must remember the Buddha's own life story. He was born a prince, surrounded by every imaginable luxury and sensual pleasure. He had the finest clothes, the most delicious food, and was shielded from every sight of suffering. This was the extreme of hedonistic indulgence. Yet, he found it hollow, a gilded cage that could not touch the deep, underlying anxiety of existence. So, he left the palace and plunged into the opposite extreme. He became a wandering ascetic, practicing severe self-mortification. He starved his body until his ribs protruded like a picket fence. He held his breath until he felt excruciating pain. He slept on beds of thorns, believing that by punishing the body, he could liberate the spirit. But after 6 years of this brutal self-denial, he was no closer to enlightenment. He was merely exhausted, his body weakened and his mind unable to find clarity. One day, close to death from his austerities, he sat by a river and overheard a musician on a passing boat teaching his student how to tune a lute. The teacher said, "If you tighten the string too much, it will snap. If you leave the string too loose, it will not make a sound." The beautiful, resonant music only comes when the string is tuned just right. In that moment, a profound insight dawned in the Buddha's mind. The path to awakening was not to be found in either extreme. Indulging the senses dulled the mind. Punishing the body weakened it. The path was a middle way, a path of exquisite balance between indulgence and denial. The Noble Eightfold Path is the very embodiment of this middle way. It is a guide to tuning the instrument of our own being, body, our speech, our heart, and our mind so that it can produce the beautiful music of wisdom and compassion. The 8 factors of the path are not a random collection of rules, but a deeply interconnected and holistic system for human flourishing. They are traditionally grouped into 3 essential trainings, which, when practiced together, transform our entire being. The first is the training in wisdom, or panya. This is the guiding intelligence of the path. It is the map and the compass for our journey, ensuring we are seeing reality clearly and heading in the right direction. This training consists of 2 path factors. First, right view, which is the process of clearing away our delusions and seeing the world as it truly is, understanding the nature of karma, impermanence, and suffering. Second is right intention, which involves aligning our heart's deepest motivations with this clear seeing, consciously cultivating intentions of kindness, compassion, and letting go. The second is the training in ethical conduct, or sila. This is how we walk the path in our daily lives. It is the art of acting in the world in a way that is harmless, helpful, and healing. It governs our relationships with all other beings. This training consists of 3 path factors: right speech, which means refraining from lying, harsh speech, divisive speech, and idle chatter, and instead using our words to bring truth, kindness, and harmony. Next is right action, which involves abstaining from killing, stealing, and sexual misconduct, and instead acting with respect for the life and well-being of all. Finally, there is right livelihood, which means choosing to earn a living in a profession that does not cause harm to ourselves or to any other being. The third is the training in mental discipline, or samadhi. If sila is how we walk, samadhi is the training of the mind of the walker. It is the cultivation of a mind that is calm, focused, resilient, and capable of deep insight. This training also consists of 3 path factors: right effort, which is the joyful and energetic persistence in letting go of unwholesome states of mind and cultivating wholesome ones. Next is right mindfulness, which is the heart of the path, the moment-to-moment awareness of our body, our feelings, our mind, and reality itself. And finally, there is right concentration, the ability to gather the scattered forces of the mind and unify them in a powerful, steady focus that can penetrate the deepest truths of existence. It is crucial to understand that these are not 8 sequential steps, like rungs on a ladder that you climb one after the other. This is a common misunderstanding that makes the path seem daunting. Instead, the 8 factors are like the threads of a single beautiful cord. They are all woven together and developed simultaneously. Each factor supports and deepens all the others. For example, your practice of right mindfulness, mental discipline, allows you to notice the arising of an angry impulse before you speak. This gives you the space to choose not to engage in harsh speech, thus strengthening your practice of right speech. Ethical conduct. This act of restraint brings a sense of inner peace and self-respect, which in turn clears your mind, allowing you to see more clearly the painful consequences of anger. This insight deepens your right view, wisdom. As your wisdom grows, your intention to be harmless, right intention, becomes stronger, which further fuels your commitment to mindfulness and ethical conduct. It is a beautiful, upward spiral where every part of the path enriches every other part, leading the practitioner organically towards greater and greater freedom. The Noble Eightfold Path is the Buddha's compassionate and supremely practical gift to the world. It is a complete curriculum for living, a detailed guide for transforming our character and our consciousness. It is nothing less than the art of turning our confusion into clarity, our fear into courage, and our suffering into unshakable freedom. This entire beautiful structure rests upon a single foundation. Before we can take a single step, before we can align our ethics or train our minds, we must first ensure we are looking at the map correctly. We must start with the foundation of all wisdom, the very lens through which we see the world. And so, we begin our detailed exploration of the path with its first and most crucial factor, right view. Having accepted the profound responsibility that comes with understanding the law of karma, and having been introduced to the Noble Eightfold Path as the supreme guide to skillful living, we are now ready to begin our journey into the path itself. We begin where all true journeys must begin, with the foundation of wisdom, known in Pali as Panya. Before a traveler sets out on a great expedition across an unknown wilderness, there are two things they absolutely must have. First, they need an accurate map of the territory, one that shows the mountains, the rivers, the safe passages, and the dangerous pitfalls. Second, they need a reliable compass, one that points them steadfastly towards their chosen destination. Without the right map, their effort will be directionless. Without the right compass, their knowledge of the map is useless. They could walk with immense energy and discipline for years, only to find themselves more lost than when they began. In the context of the Eightfold Path, the map is right view, and the compass is right intention. Together, they form the wisdom training, the guiding intelligence that illuminates the entire path. They are the eyes of our practice, and without them, we are walking blind. Right view, or samadhi, is the very first factor of the path, because it is the foundation upon which everything else is built. It means seeing reality as it is, not as we wish it were, not as our fears and desires project it to be, and not as our culture has conditioned us to see it. It is the direct antidote to the most fundamental of the three poisons, delusion or ignorance. It is the process of systematically clearing away the fog of our misconceptions, so that the true landscape of existence can be seen with clarity. So, what does a person with right view actually see? They see and understand the fundamental laws that govern our existence. This includes a deep, experiential understanding of the principles we have already explored. They understand the law of karma, recognizing that our intentional actions are the seeds of our future happiness and suffering. They see the three marks of existence in all phenomena, the truth of impermanence, anicca, that all things arise and pass away, the truth of unsatisfactoriness, dukkha, that clinging to what is impermanent is inherently stressful, and the truth of not self, anatta, recognizing that there is no fixed, solid, independent ego at the core of our being. Ultimately, the perfection of right view is the full comprehension of the Four Noble Truths, to see clearly the reality of suffering, to understand its cause in our own craving and clinging, to realize the liberating possibility of its cessation, and to know the path that leads to that cessation, the Noble Eightfold Path itself. The devastating consequences of not having right view can be seen everywhere in our world and in our own lives. We suffer because we operate from a set of faulty maps, what Buddhism calls wrong view, or mikkaditta. One of the most common wrong views is materialism, the belief that lasting happiness and fulfillment can be found through accumulating wealth, status, possessions, and sensory pleasures. Operating from this faulty map, we spend our lives endlessly chasing after things that can never deliver the deep peace we truly crave, forever trapped on a hamster wheel of wanting more. Another wrong view is nihilism, the belief that life is meaningless and that our actions have no consequences. This view can lead to a sense of despair, apathy, and a complete disregard for ethical behavior, causing immense harm to oneself and others. Another common wrong view is the fallacy of control, the deep-seated belief that we can and should be able to manage the external world and the behavior of other people to suit our own preferences. This faulty map leads to a life of constant frustration, anger, conflict, and anxiety, as we are perpetually at war with the uncontrollable nature of reality. Right view is the courageous act of acknowledging that these maps are wrong, that they do not lead to the destination of peace. It is the willingness to discard them and to instead cultivate a perspective that is aligned with the truth. Now that we have the correct map of reality provided by right view, we need to set our inner compass so that our heart and our will are aligned with this newfound wisdom. This is the function of the second path factor, right intention, or samma sankappa. Right intention is about the quality of our motivation. It is the resolve that fuels our journey. It asks, given that I see the world in this new way, what do I now aspire to? What direction will I point my life in? The Buddha described 3 types of right intention, which stand in direct opposition to the 3 poisons. The first is the intention of renunciation, or nekkhamma. This stands in contrast to the intention of grasping and sensual craving. Renunciation is not about forcing ourselves to live a bleak and joyless life. It is the wise and joyful intention to let go of our addiction to chasing pleasure and our desperate clinging to things that are impermanent. It is the resolve to find our happiness within, through peace and contentment, rather than constantly seeking it from the outside world. It is the wisdom of the monkey in the parable, finally realizing that freedom is more valuable than the handful of rice, and willingly opening its fist. The second is the intention of goodwill, or avyapada. This is the direct antidote to the poison of hatred and ill will. It is the conscious resolve to meet every being we encounter with a heart of metta, or loving kindness. It is the firm aspiration to abandon anger, resentment, and hostility, and to instead cultivate patience, friendliness, and a genuine care for the well-being of others. It is taking the practice of metta and making it the guiding policy of our heart. The third is the intention of harmlessness, or avihisa. This is the direct antidote to the poison of cruelty, which is a toxic expression of delusion. It is the heartfelt intention to cause no harm, physically or emotionally, to any living being, including ourselves. It is the active cultivation of karuna, or compassion, the resolve to respond to all suffering with a desire to protect and alleviate it. It is the commitment to walk through the world with a gentle footprint, recognizing the sanctity of all life. These 2 path factors, right view and right intention, work together in perfect synergy. Right view is the wisdom of the mind that sees clearly why we should practice letting go, kindness, and compassion. It understands the karmic consequences of clinging, ill will, and cruelty. Right intention is the response of the heart to this wisdom. It is the volitional movement of the spirit that says, now that I understand this, I resolve to live my life in this way. Wisdom without a compassionate intention can become dry, cold, and disconnected. A good intention without the guidance of wisdom can be naive and misguided, but together they form the intelligent and powerful engine that drives us forward on the path to liberation. With our map of reality clarified by right view, and our heart's compass set firmly toward our highest aspirations by right intention, we are now fully prepared to take our first steps on the path. We are ready to translate this inner wisdom and motivation into our engagement with the world. This translation begins with the most powerful tool we possess for creating connection or division, healing or harm, Our speech, with our perspective grounded in right view and our heart's compass calibrated by right intention, we are now ready to begin walking the path. We are ready to translate our inner understanding into our outer actions. This brings us to the second major division of the Noble Eightfold Path, the training in ethical conduct, or Sila. This training is comprised of the next three path factors: right speech, right action, and right livelihood. It is the practical, moment-to-moment application of wisdom and compassion in our interactions with the world. It is essential to approach Sila not as a restrictive code of morality imposed from the outside, a list of thou shalts and thou shalt nots designed to make us feel guilty. Rather, Sila is a joyful training in non-harming. It arises organically from a mind that sees clearly and a heart that intends well. When we understand through right view that all beings are interconnected and that our actions have consequences through the law of karma, we naturally want to act in a way that creates happiness and not suffering. Ethical conduct is not something we do to please a god or to earn a reward in the afterlife. It is a profound act of self-care. It protects us from the mental poisons of guilt, remorse, and agitation. It creates a life of integrity and self-respect, which in turn becomes the stable and peaceful foundation upon which we can build the deeper practices of meditation and concentration. We begin with the tool we use most frequently, the one with the most immediate power to heal or to harm, our speech. Right speech, or samma vacha, asks us to become mindful custodians of the words that leave our mouths. Our words can be balms that soothe and connect, or they can be weapons that wound and divide. The Buddha taught right speech in two ways: what to abstain from and what to cultivate. There are four types of harmful speech that we practice abandoning. The first is lying. This means abstaining from knowingly speaking falsehoods, but it goes deeper than just telling obvious lies. It includes the subtle ways we deceive, exaggerating our accomplishments, making promises we have no intention of keeping, telling white lies to avoid minor discomfort, or withholding crucial information to mislead someone. Every act of dishonesty, no matter how small, erodes trust and creates a distance between ourselves and others. A commitment to truthful speech is a commitment to living in reality. The second type of harmful speech is divisive speech, or slander. This is the act of speaking in a way that sets one person against another. It includes gossip, backbiting, and spreading rumors. The ego often derives a subtle, perverse pleasure from being in the know about someone else's faults, or from creating drama between others. But this kind of speech poisons the well of community. It destroys friendships, creates factions, and fosters an atmosphere of suspicion. Right speech asks us to abandon this harmful habit and instead speak in ways that promote harmony and reconciliation. The third is harsh speech. This includes all forms of verbal aggression: yelling, cursing, insults, name, calling, and biting sarcasm intended to wound. Harsh speech is the sound of anger made manifest. It is a direct, verbal assault that causes immediate pain and leaves lasting scars. It shuts down communication and creates fear. The practice of right speech is to notice the arising of anger and to choose, in that moment, to refrain from turning it into a verbal weapon. The fourth type is idle chatter. This is pointless, frivolous, and aimless talk. It is speaking simply to fill the silence, talking about unimportant matters that have no real purpose or benefit. While it may seem harmless, constant idle chatter agitates the mind, scatters our energy, and prevents the development of a calm, focused awareness. It is the opposite of a mind collected in mindfulness. Having abandoned these four forms of harmful speech, what do we cultivate instead? The Buddha gave us a beautiful and practical filter for our words. Before we speak, we can ask ourselves a series of questions. First, is what I am about to say true? If it is not true, we should not say it. Second, is it kind? If it is true but not kind, we should pause. Is there a gentler way to say it? Is it necessary to say it at all? Third, is it helpful or beneficial? Will these words lead to a positive outcome, to greater understanding or well-being? And fourth, is this the right time to speak? Even a true, kind, and helpful word can cause harm if spoken at the wrong time. A wise person, one who practices right speech, speaks only when the words can pass through all these gates. They use their speech as an instrument of truth, kindness, healing, and connection. From speech, we move to our physical actions. Right action, or samma kamanta, is about embodying our wisdom and compassion in what we do. It is traditionally defined by abstaining from three main actions. First is abstaining from taking life. This is the bedrock principle of non-harming, or ahimsa. On its most fundamental level, it means refraining from intentionally killing any living being, from a human to the smallest insect. On a deeper level, it is a cultivation of a profound reverence for all life. It means abandoning violence in all its forms and instead choosing to be a protector and benefactor of life. Second is abstaining from taking what is not given. At its simplest, this means not stealing, but it extends to all forms of dishonesty in our actions. It means not cheating on our taxes, not taking office supplies from work, not taking credit for someone else's idea. It means being honest in all our business dealings and respecting the property and efforts of others. The positive expression of this practice is the cultivation of generosity, of delighting in giving rather than in taking. Third is abstaining from sexual misconduct. This means conducting ourselves with respect, kindness, and mindfulness in our sexual lives. It means refraining from any sexual act that causes harm, either to ourselves or to others. This includes avoiding exploitation, coercion, manipulation, and infidelity. It is a commitment to honesty and trust in our intimate relationships, ensuring that our sexuality is an expression of genuine connection and care, not of selfish craving or harm. Finally, the path of sila extends into our professional lives through the practice of right livelihood, or samma ajiva. Since we spend a vast portion of our lives at work, it is essential that the way we earn our living is in harmony with our ethical principles. Right livelihood means choosing a profession that does not require us to violate the principles of right speech or right action. The Buddha specifically named several livelihoods to be avoided: trading in weapons, in living beings, such as human trafficking, or raising animals for slaughter, in meat, in intoxicants, and in poisons. In a modern context, this means avoiding any work that is built on exploitation, deception, or causing harm to society or the environment. The positive side is to choose work that is, at a minimum, harmless, and ideally, is actively beneficial and allows us to contribute our skills for the betterment of the world. Imagine a merchant in an ancient city. He built his reputation on the foundation of sila. His words were always truthful, and he never exaggerated the quality of his goods, right speech. He gave fair measure and never cheated his customers, right action. He only sold goods that were useful and non-harmful, refusing to trade in anything that could cause suffering, right livelihood. Over time, people came to trust him completely. His reputation was his greatest treasure. His business flourished, not just financially, but in the vast network of goodwill and peace of mind it created for him and his entire community. He understood that ethical conduct is not a barrier to success, but the very foundation of a truly prosperous and happy life. This training in ethical conduct in our speech, our actions, and our work creates a beautiful, safe, and trustworthy container for our lives. It protects us from remorse and agitation, and it creates the external conditions of peace. This external peace, in turn, provides the ideal environment for cultivating the internal peace and clarity of a focused mind. Therefore, With our conduct purified, we now turn to the final and most transformative section of the path, the training in mental discipline. Having established the firm, peaceful foundation of ethical conduct, or sila, we have created a life that is outwardly harmless and inwardly free from the poisons of guilt and remorse. This external calm provides the ideal conditions for the most direct and transformative work of the path, the training of the mind itself. This is the third great division of the Noble Eightfold Path, known as Samadhi, which encompasses right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. Our untrained mind is often compared to a monkey mind. It is restless, chaotic, and easily distracted, swinging wildly from one thought to the next, from a memory of the past to an anxiety about the future, chattering endlessly and never finding a moment of peace. The training in mental discipline is the gentle, patient, and skillful process of taming this monkey, not by caging it or punishing it, but by befriending it and teaching it how to rest. These three factors, effort, mindfulness, and concentration, work as an inseparable team to transform the scattered, chaotic energy of the monkey mind into a state of brilliant, focused, and powerful clarity. The journey begins with right effort, or samma vayama. The word effort in this context can be misleading. It does not mean a grim, joyless, white-knuckled striving. The Pali word vayama implies a sense of joyful energy, of diligent and wholehearted endeavor. It is the engine of our practice, the motivation that propels us along the path. The perfect metaphor for right effort is that of a wise and diligent gardener tending the garden of the mind. The gardener's work has four distinct aspects. First, the gardener practices prevention. He builds a sturdy fence around his garden to prevent the seeds of invasive weeds from blowing in from the neighboring fields. In our practice, this is the effort of sense restraint. It means being mindful of what we allow into our minds through our senses. We choose to consume media that is uplifting rather than agitating, to spend time with people who are kind rather than toxic, and to avoid situations that we know will trigger our unwholesome tendencies. We wisely guard the gates of our senses. Second, the gardener practices abandoning. When he sees that a weed, like anger or jealousy, has already sprouted in his garden, he does not ignore it. He understands that if left untended, it will grow strong and choke out his beautiful flowers. So, he gently but firmly pulls the weed out by its root. In our practice, this is the effort to let go of unwholesome states that have already arisen. When we notice anger, we can apply the antidote of loving kindness. When we feel the grip of greed, we can practice generosity. We actively replace the unwholesome with the wholesome. Third, the gardener practices cultivation. He doesn't just pull weeds. He actively plants the seeds of beautiful flowers and nourishing vegetables. He seeks out the seeds of compassion, wisdom, joy, and peace. In our practice, this is the effort to cultivate wholesome states that have not yet arisen. We intentionally engage in practices like metta meditation. We study the teachings, we listen to wise teachers, and we surround ourselves with spiritual friends who inspire our better nature. We make our mind a welcoming place for goodness to grow. Finally, the gardener practices maintenance. Once a beautiful flower has bloomed, he does not simply walk away and forget about it. He continues to water it, to make sure it gets enough sunlight, and to protect it from pests. In our practice, when a moment of peace, clarity, or kindness arises, we learn to cherish it. We savor the feeling, we encourage it, and we incline our minds towards it again and again. This helps that wholesome state to stabilize, grow strong, and become a more permanent feature of our inner landscape. This fourfold effort, undertaken with joyful diligence, is what transforms the wild, overgrown thicket of our mind into a beautiful, flourishing garden. But how does the gardener know a weed from a flower? How does he know when to pull and when to nurture? This requires the clear-seeing intelligence of the central pillar of the entire path, right mindfulness, or samasati. If right effort is the energy of the practice, right mindfulness is the wisdom that directs that energy. Sati is often translated as mindfulness, but its essence is bare attention. It is the quality of awareness that sees exactly what is happening in the present moment, without adding anything to it, and without taking anything away. It is like a perfect, clean mirror. A mirror reflects whatever comes before Ita's smiling face, a weeping face, a beautiful flower, a piece of dust with perfect impartiality. It does not cling to the beautiful image or push away the ugly one. It simply reflects, clearly and accurately. This is the quality of right mindfulness. The Buddha provided a comprehensive framework for developing this quality, known as the 4 foundations of mindfulness. The first is mindfulness of the body. This is our primary anchor, our connection to the present moment. It includes awareness of the breath, awareness of our posture, and a clear comprehension of all the physical actions we perform throughout the day. The second is mindfulness of feelings, or more accurately, of feeling tones. This is the practice of paying bare attention to the raw quality of any experience as being either pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, before we get caught in the story or the reaction. It is by being mindful at this level that we avoid firing the second arrow. The third is mindfulness of the mind, or consciousness itself. This is the practice of observing the overall state of our mind. Is the mind lustful right now? Is it angry? Is it scattered? Is it calm? We learn to see these states not as who I am, but as temporary, impersonal conditions that arise and pass away, like weather patterns in the sky. The fourth is mindfulness of dhammas, or mental objects. This is the practice of observing the specific contents of the mind in relation to the Buddha's teachings. We watch how the 5 hindrances like desire and aversion arise and cease, and how the 7 factors of enlightenment like mindfulness, investigation, and joy arise and are developed. Right mindfulness is the master faculty. It is the mindfulness that knows a weed is a weed and a flower is a flower, thus guiding right effort. It is mindfulness that notices we are about to speak a harsh word, giving us the space to choose right speech. It is mindfulness that sees the suffering of another, awakening our right intention of compassion. As we apply right effort and right mindfulness together over time, the third factor of our mental training begins to develop, right concentration, or sama samadhi. If the ordinary, untrained mind is like the diffuse, scattered light of a household light bulb, a mind that has been cultivated with concentration is like a powerful, coherent laser beam. All of its energy is gathered together and focused on a single point, giving it the immense power to penetrate and illuminate. In meditation, as we apply right effort to continually return our attention to the breath, guided by the clear seeing of right mindfulness, the mind gradually learns to stay put. The frantic energy of the monkey mind begins to calm down. The mind becomes unified, still, and powerfully present. This is right concentration. The fruit of this practice can be the experience of the jhanas, which are profound states of meditative absorption, characterized by an absence of conceptual thought and the presence of powerful states of bliss, joy, and deep peace. This is the taming of the monkey mind. Perfected, these 3 factors of the samadhi training are a seamless and interdependent team. Right effort is the energy that tirelessly brings the mind back. Right mindfulness is the clear awareness that recognizes the mind has wandered and knows where the object of meditation is. Right concentration is the stable, unified state that results from applying effort and mindfulness again and again. This training in mental discipline, this systematic taming of the mind, is not an end in itself. We do not develop a powerful, concentrated mind just to feel peaceful. We develop it so that it can be used as a tool, like a powerful microscope, to see into the deepest workings of reality. to understand precisely how suffering is constructed in our own experience. When the mind is thus sharpened, we are ready to look at the intricate, interdependent chain of causation that gives rise to all phenomena. This is the profound teaching of dependent origination. We have arrived at a pivotal moment in our journey. Through the training in ethical conduct, we have pacified our outer world. Through the training in mental discipline, we have sharpened our inner world, transforming the scattered light of our attention into a powerful, focused laser beam of concentration. The question now is, where do we point this powerful instrument? We point it at the deepest and most fundamental question of all. How, precisely, does suffering arise? We are no longer looking for a general philosophical answer. We are looking for the exact, moment-to-moment mechanics of how our own confusion and pain are constructed. The Buddha's answer to this question is perhaps his most profound and revolutionary discovery. It is a teaching called Paticca-samuppada, which can be translated as dependent origination or conditioned arising. This is not a metaphysical theory to be believed, but a scientific description of a process that is happening right now in your own mind. It is the ultimate diagnostic map of the human psyche, and understanding it gives us the power to dismantle the entire structure of our suffering at its very root. The core principle of dependent origination is breathtakingly simple and elegant. When this is, that is. From the arising of this, that arises. When this is not, that is not. From the cessation of this, that ceases. This principle reveals that nothing exists in isolation. Everything, without exception, from a galaxy to a thought, arises in dependence upon specific causes and conditions. A plant is not a magical, independent entity. It is a process that depends on a seed, soil, water, sunlight, and air. If you remove any of these conditions, the process we call plant cannot continue. A flame burning on a candle is not a thing in itself. It is a process dependent on a wick, wax, and oxygen. Take away the oxygen, and the process we call flame immediately ceases. This same law applies to our inner world. The feeling we call anger is not a solid, monstrous thing. It is a conditioned process, dependent on a trigger event, our past conditioning, our current physical state, and the stories we tell ourselves. When we see this, the emotion loses its solidity and its power over us. To illustrate exactly how this process creates our experience of suffering, the Buddha outlined a chain of 12 interconnected links, or nidanas. This is not a linear chain in time, but a circular process where each link conditions the next, creating a self-perpetuating feedback loop of suffering. This entire cycle can play out over lifetimes, or it can play out in the space of a few seconds. The cycle begins with ignorance, or avijja. This is the fundamental background state of not seeing reality clearly. It is the mind clouded by the delusion that things are permanent, that clinging can lead to lasting happiness, and that we possess a solid, independent self or ego. Because of this background ignorance, we engage in volitional formations, or sankhara. These are the karmic actions of body, speech, and mind we spoke of earlier. We plant seeds of greed, hatred, and further delusion, motivated by our mistaken view of reality. These actions propel our consciousness, or vijnana, forward. This is the stream of awareness that latches onto experience, carrying the imprint of our past karma. This consciousness then conditions the arising of name and form, or nama-rupa. This is the psychophysical organism, the mind-body complex. Form is our physical body, and name refers to the mental components of our experience: feeling, perception, intention, and so on. This organism is equipped with the 6 sense bases, or sarayatana. These are our faculties for experiencing the world: the eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, for touch, and the mind itself, which perceives thoughts and ideas. When a sense organ, a sense object, and consciousness come together, it creates contact, or phassa. The eye sees a red shape, the ear hears a loud sound, the mind thinks a thought. This is happening constantly, a torrent of raw data entering our system. And now we come to the most critical link in the entire chain. From contact, there immediately arises feeling, or vedana. This is the raw, preconceptual feeling tone of the experience. It is pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. This happens before any story, before any judgment. This is the first arrow. It is simply the raw data of life. Because of our background ignorance, we react to this feeling tone with craving, or tanha. If the feeling is pleasant, we crave for it to continue. If it is unpleasant, we crave for it to cease. This is the moment of the second arrow. This is the moment the reactive mind takes over. This craving then intensifies into clinging, or upadana. We are no longer just wanting, or not wanting. We are grasping, obsessing, identifying. We cling to pleasure, we cling to our opinions, we cling to our identity, and we desperately try to push away our pain. This powerful energy of clinging fuels the process of becoming, or bhava. This is the forward-driving momentum that creates a new sense of a solid, psychological self that is experiencing this drama, solidifying our identity and planting more karmic seeds for the future. And this process of becoming leads to birth, or jati, the arising in the next moment of a seemingly solid self who is the inheritor of this whole mess. And of course, because this self has been born into this psychological drama, it is subject to aging and death, jara marana, which stands for the entire mass of suffering, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair. This may seem complex, but its practical application is what matters. This entire chain shows us that our suffering is not a random event, but a predictable, conditioned process. And because it is a process, we can intervene. If we can break just one link in the chain, the entire feedback loop collapses. The Buddha pointed to one link as the golden opportunity for liberation, the link between feeling and craving. This is the space between the first and second arrows. With mindfulness, we can learn to experience a pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral feeling without automatically reacting with craving and clinging. We can simply allow the raw energy of the feeling to be what it is, knowing that it is impermanent. When we do this, the chain is broken. Craving does not arise. Clinging does not arise. The entire subsequent cascade of suffering is averted. This is liberation in real time. This profound understanding of interconnectedness is beautifully captured in the Mahayana Buddhist image of Indra's net. Imagine a vast, cosmic net stretching out infinitely in all directions. At every single point where the threads of the net intersect, there hangs a multifaceted, perfectly clear jewel. Each jewel reflects on its polished surface every other jewel in the entire net. And if you were to look closely at any one of those reflections, you would see within it the reflections of all the other jewels, stretching on into infinity. This is the universe of dependent origination. Each jewel is a being, a thought, an event. It has no isolated existence of its own. Its entire being consists of the reflections of everything else. You are one of those jewels. Your identity is not a solid, separate thing, but a shimmering, ever-changing confluence of the entire universe reflecting itself through you. To see this is to see through the deepest illusion of the ego. This profound insight that all phenomena, including ourselves, are devoid of any independent, intrinsic existence, is the gateway to the most liberating and perhaps most misunderstood teaching in all of Buddhism. It is the wisdom that sees that because everything is dependently arisen, everything is also inherently empty of a separate self. This is the wisdom of emptiness, or shunyata. Our journey into the heart of reality has led us through the intricate, clockwork-like precision of dependent origination. We have seen that nothing exists in isolation. that all phenomena arise in a shimmering, interdependent web of causes and conditions, just like the jewels in Indra's net, each one reflecting all the others. This understanding is the final gateway. To walk through it is to arrive at the pinnacle of Buddhist wisdom, a view of reality so profound, so liberating, and so often misunderstood, that it has the power to unravel suffering at its deepest level. This is the wisdom of shunyata, or emptiness. The word emptiness can sound frightening. It can conjure images of a cold, dark void, of nihilism, of a negation of life and all that we hold dear. But this is a complete and total misinterpretation. In the Buddhist context, emptiness is not a terrifying abyss. It is a discovery of boundless freedom. It is not a statement that nothing exists. It is a clarification of how things exist. The pivotal question is not, is it empty? But empty of what? And the answer is revolutionary. All things are empty of a separate, independent, permanent, and intrinsic self-nature. Let us take a simple object, like a flower. We look at it and our mind immediately applies the label flower. We perceive it as a solid, self-contained thing. But let us investigate with a clearer mind. Where is the flowerness of this flower? Is it in the petals? No, a petal is just a petal. Is it in the stem, the color, the fragrance, number? If we break the flower down into its component parts, we cannot find a separate entity called flower, but we can go deeper. This flower is composed entirely of what we can call non-flower elements. Its existence is dependent on sunlight, on a rain cloud, on soil, on minerals, on bees that carried its pollen, on time, and on the entire history of the cosmos that led to this moment. The sunlight is not the flower. The soil is not the flower. The rain is not the flower. Yet, without these non-flower elements, there is no flower. The flower is completely full of the entire universe, and therefore, it is empty of any separate, isolated self. Its existence is nothing other than its radical interconnectedness. The great Zen master, Thich Nhat Hanh, would say, "Form is emptiness, and emptiness is form." This means that precisely because the flower is empty of a separate self, it can manifest and exist as a beautiful, conditioned form. Emptiness is not the negation of form. It is the very condition that makes form possible. Now, we must apply this same fearless analysis to the object we hold most dear, the entity we are most convinced is solid and real, ourself. We feel, with absolute conviction, that there is a solid, continuous me at the center of our experience. But let us look for it. Where is this self? Is it in the body? Our body is constantly changing, aging, and is composed entirely of non-self elements. The food we ate, the water we drank, the air we breathe. Is the self in our feelings? Feelings are like fleeting weather patterns, arising and passing away based on conditions. Is it in our thoughts? We have seen that thoughts are ownerless, arising and ceasing in the mind like clouds in the sky. Is it our name, our memories? These are just concepts, stories. Buddhism deconstructs our being into 5 aggregates, or skandhas. The aggregate of form, our body, feelings, perceptions, mental formations, our thoughts and intentions, and consciousness. Our being is a dynamic, flowing process, a river of these 5 interdependent streams. There is no little CEO, no permanent soul or self sitting behind these processes, directing them. The self we feel is like a wave on the surface of the ocean. A wave has a recognizable form, a temporary identity. We can point to it and say, there is a wave, but what is it truly? Is it separate from the ocean? Number. It is simply the ocean itself, rising and falling due to a confluence of conditions like wind, currents, and the shape of the seafloor. The wave is made of 100% water. It is empty of any separate, intrinsic wave self. In the same way, you and I are temporary, beautiful, and complex waves on the ocean of existence. We are a manifestation of the entire universe, empty of any solid, separate self that we need to protect and defend. This insight is the ultimate liberation. All of our suffering, every last bit of it, comes from clinging. We cling to our bodies, our possessions, our reputations, our opinions, our loved ones, and above all, we cling to this illusory sense of a separate self. This clinging is the source of all our fear, anxiety, jealousy, and grief. But what happens when we see, with the piercing clarity of wisdom, that there is nothing solid to cling to? If the self is an empty, flowing process, who is there to be praised or insulted? If an insult is just an empty sound wave, being perceived by an empty process of consciousness, where does the hurt actually land? If our cherished possessions are just temporary arrangements of dependently arisen conditions, where is the sting of loss? If even death is just the dissolution of a temporary form back into its constituent elements, where is the terror? The wisdom of emptiness does not destroy anything. It simply reveals that there was never anything solid there to begin with. It pulls the rug out from under the entire project of the ego. When there is nothing to grasp and no one to do the grasping, suffering has no place to stand. The Buddha told a famous parable about a man who needed to cross a great, dangerous river to get to the far shore of safety and peace, which represents Nibbana. Seeing no boat or bridge, he diligently gathered grass, twigs, and branches, and built himself a raft. This raft is the Dharma, the teachings. Using his hands and feet, he paddled the raft and safely crossed to the far shore. Now that he was on the other side, the Buddha asked, "What should this wise man do?" Should he say, "This raft has been so useful to me, I must hoist it onto my shoulders and carry it with me for the rest of my journey?" "Of course not," the monks replied. "That would be a foolish and heavy burden. He should simply pull the raft onto the shore, express his gratitude for its service, and then leave it behind as he continues his journey on land." The Buddha explained that all of his teachings, even the most profound, are like this raft. They are skillful means, incredibly useful tools designed for the sole purpose of carrying us across the river of suffering. But they are not an ultimate reality to be clung to as a dogma. The ultimate goal is to arrive at the shore of direct, personal liberation. The teaching of emptiness is the final, ultimate raft. It is the teaching that helps us to let go of our attachment to everything, including our attachment to the teachings themselves. It is not a denial of life, but the most radical affirmation of it. It is the wisdom that allows us to finally stop fighting with reality and instead dance with its fluid, luminous, and interconnected nature. It is the wisdom that reveals that when there are no solid boundaries between self and other, the flow of love and compassion is boundless and effortless. With this profound, liberating view of reality as an interconnected, empty, and luminous dance, we are not meant to retreat from the world. Its entire purpose is to transform how we live, not just on the meditation cushion, but in every single moment of our ordinary lives. So, how do we take this peak wisdom and integrate it into our daily walk, into the way we wash the dishes, drive to work, and speak to our families? This is the art of bringing the monastery into the marketplace. We have journeyed to the highest peaks of wisdom, gazing upon the liberating, interconnected, and empty nature of all reality. From this vantage point, we can see that the universe is a luminous, dynamic dance, and we are not separate from it. But these profound views are not meant to be a remote, intellectual trophy that we keep on a shelf. Their entire purpose is to fundamentally transform the way we live, not in some distant future or a secluded monastery, but right here, in the heart of our messy, beautiful, ordinary lives. This brings us to the vital art of integration. A common pitfall for spiritual seekers is to create a sharp and artificial division between their formal practice and their real life. We might sit on our meditation cushion for 30 minutes and cultivate a beautiful sense of peace and clarity. But the moment the timer goes off and we step back into the stream of our daily responsibilities, we revert to our old, unconscious patterns of reactivity, stress, and distraction. The peace we found feels like a fragile bubble that pops the instant it touches the real world. The ultimate goal of the path is to dissolve this boundary. It is to learn how to bring the same quality of mindful, compassionate awareness that we cultivate on the cushion into every single moment of our lives. It is to transform our entire life into a seamless field of practice. This is the creation of a monastery without walls, where washing the dishes, driving in traffic, and listening to a loved one become as sacred and profound as any silent retreat. To do this, we must first expand our definition of meditation. We tend to associate meditation exclusively with sitting in a specific posture, with eyes closed, focusing on the breath. This is formal meditation, and it is an indispensable tool for training the mind and developing stability. But it is only one form of practice. True meditation is not an activity, but a quality of awareness. It is the act of bringing a gentle, non-judgmental, wholehearted presence to whatever is happening right now. Understood in this way, any activity at all can become a meditation. The object of our awareness is no longer limited to the breath. It can be the sensation of warm water on our hands. It can be the taste of a piece of fruit. It can be the feeling of our feet on the earth. This is the art of informal practice, of weaving mindfulness into the very fabric of our day until there is no separation left. Let us look at how this works. Consider the simple act of eating. For most of us, a meal is something to be consumed quickly, often while distracted by our phones, the television, or our own anxious thoughts. We barely taste the food, and we finish without even realizing we've eaten. We can transform this into a profound practice of mindful eating. Before taking the first bite, we can pause and look at the food on our plate, contemplating the incredible web of interconnected causes and conditions that brought it to us. The sun, the rain, the earth, the farmer who toiled in the fields, the truck driver who transported it, the person who prepared it. This is a direct contemplation of dependent origination. Then, as we eat, we do so with our full attention. We notice the colors, the smells, the textures. We chew slowly, savoring each flavor. We put our fork down between bites. We eat with a sense of gratitude and presence, nourishing not just our body, but our mind and heart as well. Or consider the act of walking. We spend so much of our day moving from one place to another, usually lost in thought, our bodies on autopilot. Mindful walking, or walking meditation, transforms this simple activity. As you walk, you can bring your attention to the physical sensations in your feet. Feel the lifting of one foot, the movement through the air, the placing of it on the ground, and the transfer of weight. You can sync your steps with your breath. Each step becomes an anchor that brings you right back to the here and now. The journey from your car to your office door can become a 10-step meditation retreat. Even mundane household chores can become our greatest teachers. Washing the dishes is a perfect opportunity for practice. Instead of rushing through it with a mind full of resentment, we can choose to be fully present. Feel the warmth of the water on your hands. See the iridescent shimmer of the soap bubbles. Hear the sound of the water and the clinking of the plates. Feel the simple, repetitive motion of the sponge. By bringing a calm, focused attention to this simple task, we transform drudgery into a peaceful and grounding experience. The key is not what you are doing, but the quality of awareness you bring to the doing. The true test of our practice, however, comes not in these quiet moments, but in the midst of difficulty. The path of integration teaches us to see life's challenges not as annoying interruptions to our peace, but as our most potent opportunities to practice. When you find yourself stuck in a traffic jam, your usual reaction might be to lean on the horn, curse the other drivers, and feel your blood pressure rise. The mindful approach is to recognize this moment as an invitation. You can turn off the radio, feel your hands on the steering wheel, and notice the feeling of impatience in your body. You can use the rain practice on your frustration. You can practice metta for all the other drivers who, just like you, want to get home safely. The traffic jam, your enemy, becomes your meditation hall. When you find yourself in a difficult conversation and you feel the sting of someone's critical words, your reactive habit is to immediately defend yourself or lash out. The practice is to feel that first arrow, to notice the hot flush of anger or the cold knot of fear in your body, and to create a tiny space before you respond. In that sacred pause, you can choose to engage with right speech, rather than simply reacting with another volley of harmful words. Your interpersonal conflicts become your greatest teachers of compassion and wisdom. A famous Zen story perfectly captures this goal of integration. A student asks a great Zen master, "Master, what did you do before you were enlightened?" The master replies, "I chopped wood and I carried water." The student, hoping for a more dramatic answer, then asks, "And what do you do now, after you are enlightened?" The master smiles and says, "I chop wood and I carry water." The student is utterly confused. "Then what is the difference?" he asks. The master responds, "Before I was enlightened, when I was chopping wood, my mind was thinking about carrying water. And when I was carrying water, my mind was thinking about my next cup of tea. Now, when I chop wood, I just chop wood. When I carry water, I just carry water. This is the fruit of the entire path. It is not an escape from our ordinary life, but the full and complete arrival into it. It is the end of the divided mind. It is the profound peace that comes from being simply, uncomplicatedly present for whatever life offers. Our entire life becomes the field of practice. There is no moment that is not an opportunity to be awake, to be kind, to be present. By weaving the thread of mindfulness into every corner of our days, we dissolve the boundary between the sacred and the mundane, and our life itself becomes a living, breathing expression of wisdom and compassion. This commitment to living an awakened life, not just for our own benefit but in deep connection with the world, brings us to the ultimate aim and aspiration of this entire path. What is the final destination? It is to realize our own fullest potential for wisdom and compassion, and then to turn back to the world with an open heart. This is the culmination of our journey, to explore the nature of awakening and the noble ideal of the Bodhisattva. We have walked the path of integration, learning to weave the golden threads of mindfulness, wisdom, and compassion into the fabric of our ordinary, everyday lives. We have seen that every moment, whether mundane or challenging, is an opportunity to practice. But where does this path of ceaseless practice ultimately lead? What is the final fruition of a life dedicated to this inner transformation? This brings us to the culmination of our entire journey, to the exploration of the ultimate goal itself, the realization of awakening, or Bodhi, and the boundless peace of Nibbana. For centuries, the idea of enlightenment has been shrouded in mystery and misconception. We imagine it as a superhuman state, a magical attainment reserved for saints and mystics in faraway caves, a goal so lofty as to be utterly irrelevant to our ordinary lives. But the Buddha's teaching on awakening is profoundly simple and down to earth. The word Bodhi, from which we get the word Buddha, simply means to awaken. The question then is not what new magical powers we gain, but what we awaken from. We awaken from the dream of the separate self. We awaken from the trance of believing our thoughts are unassailable facts. We awaken from the fundamental delusion that lasting happiness can be found in the fleeting, impermanent things of this world. Awakening is not an act of addition, but an act of subtraction. It is not about becoming something more than human. It is about unbecoming everything that is not our true nature. It is the shedding of all the layers of fear, conditioning, and confusion that have obscured the luminous, spacious, and peaceful awareness that has been our true nature all along. It is the sky finally realizing that it is the sky and not the passing clouds. The ultimate state that accompanies this awakening is called nibbana, or nirvana in Sanskrit. This word, too, is burdened with misunderstanding, often imagined as a kind of heavenly paradise one enters after death. But nibbana is not a place. It is a state of being that is accessible right here and now. The word literally means to extinguish or to blow out. What then is extinguished? It is not our life, our personality, or our vitality that is blown out. What is extinguished, completely and forever, are the three fires that fuel all of our suffering: the consuming fire of greed and craving, the scorching fire of hatred and aversion, and the smoldering, bewildering fire of ignorance and delusion. When these fires that have driven us relentlessly our entire lives are finally put out, what remains is not a cold, empty void. What remains is the mind's natural, uncovered state, a state of profound peace, unshakable serenity, and boundless freedom. It is the end of all inner conflict. It is the permanent cessation of the second arrow. It is the peace that surpasses all understanding, a peace that is not dependent on any external conditions whatsoever. This liberation can be seen as the ultimate goal of the path. To finally be free from the torment of our own reactive minds is a beautiful and worthy aspiration. Yet, within the vast tapestry of Buddhist thought, a still more expansive and compassionate ideal emerged, one that has inspired millions for centuries. This is the ideal of the Bodhisattva. A Bodhisattva is literally an awakening being. It is a person who has cultivated the wisdom to achieve their own liberation, to cross the river of suffering and reach the far shore of nibbana, but who, out of a heart breaking with boundless compassion, makes a profound vow. They vow to postpone their own final entry into the peace of nibbana and to willingly return to the world of birth and death, again and again, in countless forms, using their wisdom and skill to help every other suffering being find their way to freedom. This is the ultimate expression of karuna, compassion, fused with the wisdom of shunyata, emptiness. When one truly and directly sees the interconnectedness of all life, when one understands that there are no solid boundaries between self and other, the very idea of seeking liberation for oneself alone becomes a logical impossibility. The suffering of a stranger becomes one's own suffering. The cry of a child anywhere in the universe echoes in one's own heart. The Bodhisattva's vow is not an act of self-sacrifice. It is the natural and spontaneous expression of a heart that has realized its non-separation from all that is. This represents the great turning point of the spiritual journey. We may begin the path with the very personal and valid motivation of ending our own pain, but as we walk, as our heart softens and our wisdom deepens, this self-centered motivation naturally blossoms into something far greater. Our personal healing journey becomes part of a universal healing journey. Our liberation is not complete until all are liberated. This noble path is beautifully depicted in the 10 ox-herding pictures of Zen Buddhism, which illustrate the stages of awakening. The early pictures show a farmer searching for his lost ox, which represents his true nature. He sees its tracks, he catches a glimpse of it, he struggles to tame it, and he finally rides it peacefully home. The 9th picture shows a state of profound emptiness, a perfect white circle, where both the self and the ox have disappeared into blissful unity. But the story does not end there. The 10th and final picture is the most important. It depicts the enlightened sage, fat and happy, returning to the village and the marketplace. He is not meditating alone on a remote mountain. He is mingling with ordinary people, with butchers and fishmongers. His clothes are disheveled, and he carries a gourd of wine. His hands are described as bliss-bestowing. He doesn't need to preach or teach in a formal way. His very presence is joy, his ease, his boundless, non-judgmental love is a teaching that awakens others. He has realized the highest wisdom, and he has turned it into the most profound, accessible love. This is the Bodhisattva ideal. This is the ultimate meaning of turning pain into power. The power we gain is not for ourselves. It is not the power to escape the world, but the power to re-engage with it fully, fearlessly, and with a heart that has the capacity to hold all of its sorrow and all of its joy. It is the power to be a source of healing and peace in a world that desperately needs it. And so, our journey through the intricate landscape of the path comes to a close. We have seen the diagnosis, we have learned the cure, and we have glimpsed the final, beautiful destination. Now, let us take a moment to gather these precious threads together, to summarize this profound art of turning pain into power, and to see how we can carry its wisdom forward into every remaining moment of our lives. Our long journey together through the inner landscape of the mind and heart is now drawing to a close. We began in the familiar territory of confusion and struggle, feeling lost in a world that moved too fast, weighed down by a suffering whose source seemed mysterious. We started our exploration by unmasking the unseen architect of this struggle, the fragile ego, and its desperate resistance to the universal truth of impermanence. We learned the pivotal lesson of the two arrows, discovering that while life's pain is inevitable, our own suffering is a reaction that we have the power to change. To find that power, we discovered our own breath as a faithful and ever-present anchor, a safe harbor in the storm of our reactivity. With the stability born from this simple practice, we learned to watch the clouds of our thoughts and the weather of our emotions without being swept away, using the gentle alchemy of rain to meet our own pain with transformative, compassionate presence. From there, we learned to actively cultivate a beautiful inner world, opening our hearts through the divine abodes of loving kindness, compassion for the suffering of all, joy in the good fortune of others, and the profound, unshakable peace of equanimity. We explored the deep art of letting go, the empowering law of karma, and the comprehensive blueprint for a wise and ethical life, the noble eightfold path. Finally, our journey took us to the very peak of wisdom, gazing into the profound, interconnected nature of reality through the lens of dependent origination, and tasting the ultimate freedom that comes from realizing the truth of emptiness. We saw that this entire path culminates not in a selfish retreat from the world, but in the ultimate expression of love, the vow of the Bodhisattva to turn back towards the world and dedicate one's life to the welfare of all. If there is one truth to carry forth from our time together, let it be this: the goal is not to create a life free from storms, for that is an impossible and futile task. The goal is to become the calm, spacious, and silent eye at the very center of the hurricane. True power is not the ability to bend the world to our will, but the quiet, unshakable mastery of our own inner world. And pain, which we once saw as our greatest enemy, can now be understood in a new light. It is not a punishment, but a sacred signal. It is a wise and compassionate teacher, pointing us with unerring accuracy to the exact places where we are still clinging, still caught in delusion, still in need of our own kindness. The path has been laid out, the tools have been offered, but they are of no use as mere concepts. They must be lived, practiced, and embodied for their truth to become our own. This entire journey, from the depths of confusion to the heights of clarity, begins and ends in this very moment. It begins with your next conscious inhalation and exhalation. It continues with the next kind word you choose to speak instead of a harsh one. It unfolds with the next moment you choose to meet your own anxiety with courageous presence instead of habitual fear. This is not a path to a distant destination, but a continuous practice of returning, again and again, to the loving awareness that is, and always has been, your true home. The work is simply to begin, right now, and to continue, one breath at a time.